The speed of things now can't be taken back. A debt is coming due, carried on a bitter wind. Listen, as it all begins with a single, sharp breath. "Han-man, how strong are these officers?" asked Lin Feng. He wanted to understand the potential of the army. The best way to find out was to understand how strong the officers were. Ordinary soldiers are all at the Qi layer. Guards are at the peak of the Qi layer. Sergeants are required to have broken through to the Ling Qi layer. It's even stricter for the lieutenants who are required to have broken through, at least, the 3rd Ling Qi layer. Non-commissioned officers must have broken through to the 6th Ling Qi layer. And as far as the 3 officers are concerned, one is at the 8th Ling Qi layer, and the 2 others are at the 9th Ling Qi layer. One more step and they'll reach the Xuan Qi layer. They are extremely strong. Han-man explained these things in details to Lin Feng. Strength was the most important thing in the cultivation world, especially within the army. Strength was required when speaking to soldiers. It was impossible to rely only on one's military exploits. Strength was necessary to make subordinates obey orders. Even on the battlefield, without strength, it was too easy to get killed. Being inspiring and intimidating was the biggest challenge. "Lin Feng, big brother, we stand alone as the Kai-Zai troops. Even though the number is not as numerous as for the other parts of the army, their average strength is much higher than the other soldiers. Besides, the officer of the Kai-Zai troops is at the peak of the 9th Ling Qi layer. It is said that he is about to break through to the Xuan Qi layer. How majestic," added Han-man. Lin Feng understood why the situation was that way. The Kai-Zai troops were elite troops created by Liu Cang Lan himself. It was impossible for them not to be the strongest unit within the army. The armor they were wearing was different from that of the other soldiers. They all had black and gold armor, which greatly increased their defense. Besides, the armor had a red luster to it, which made the soldiers look incredibly majestic. That is why Han-man and Po Jun wore the armor. It made them strike fear into people. One glance was enough to scare people away, as if the armor contained the swift and fierce Qi of the Kai-Zai. "Lin Feng, big brother, you can ask the general to give you a lieutenant position so that we can fight the enemy together." Han-man's voice was filled with enthusiasm. Lin Feng had come to fight the enemy. If they could fight together side by side as brothers, they would certainly be even more inspired and motivated. "Lin Feng." At that moment, 5 people were moving towards them. The one taking the lead was Liu Cang Lan. When Han-man and Po Jun saw these people, they stood perfectly straight, slightly bowed, and performed a military salute. "General officer." Liu Cang Lan slightly nodded and said, "Han-man, Po Jun, you two can leave." "Roger, General," said Han-man and Po Jun while looking at Lin Feng with a mysterious smile on their faces. Immediately after, they left. "Lin Feng, come in there with me," said Liu Cang Lan. Immediately after, he and the 4 people entered the tent. Lin Feng closely followed behind them. In the tent, Liu Cang Lan and the 4 others sat down in different places and stared at Lin Feng, who was standing. Lin Feng was also staring back at them. Lin Feng looked at the 2 people on Liu Cang Lan's sides. One was wearing a black and gold armor, and the other one was wearing golden armor. The 2 others were wearing silver armor. Besides, these people's expressions all looked sharp and majestic. They were calmly sitting there, but Lin Feng had the impression that the Kai-Zai troops' Qi was filling the atmosphere. "Lin Feng, this is the officer of the Kai-Zai troops, Jiu Kai-Zai. This is the middle officer, Ren Qing Quang. This is the left officer, Feng Yuhan, and this is the right officer, Lei Qing Tian." Liu Cang Lan introduced these people to Lin Feng. Jiu Kai-Zai, the officer of the Kai-Zai troops, was wearing the Kai-Zai armor. Ren Qing Quang was wearing the golden armor. The left and the right officers, Feng Yuhan and Lei Qing Tian, were wearing silver armor. Liu Cang Lan had appointed these people to lead huge portions of the army, 300,000 troops in total. Their power and influence reached the heavens. Lin Feng slightly bowed in front of these people, but he was full of questions. He didn't know why Uncle Liu had introduced him to all these people. Liu Cang Lan had left for a walk and had come back with these 4 people. It was clearly intentional and was no coincidence at all. "This is Lin Feng, whom I was telling you about, the one who has conquered Fei Fei's heart, my future son-in-law," said Liu Cang Lan to the 4 officers while smiling. Lin Feng was dumbstruck. Liu Cang Lan was surprisingly officially declaring that Liu Fei and Lin Feng had an intimate relation, and that he was going to become his son-in-law. Even though Lin Feng knew that Liu Cang Lan was trying to match Liu Fei and Lin Feng, however, they were just friends. There was nothing intimate between them. Liu Cang Lan's words made Lin Feng feel very surprised, but since he spoke that way, Lin Feng couldn't contradict him. He had no choice but to nod and confirm. I am curious to see what kind of man Liu Fei likes. The right officer Lei Qingtian stood up and took a few steps towards Lin Feng, and suddenly, an incredible amount of qi moved straight towards Lin Feng. That qi smelt like blood and death. Lin Feng, at that moment, had the impression that the person in front of him wasn't a human being but a demonic killing machine. His hands were covered with an endless amount of blood belonging to his victims. How terrifying! Lin Feng remained motionless. That insane qi was able to affect people's determination. The terrifying qi was extremely oppressing. Lin Feng didn't dare imagine how many lives he had taken to become an officer. Such a qi was monstrous. Huh! Lei Qingtian looked interested when he saw that Lin Feng was remaining calm. Immediately after, he took another step towards Lin Feng. He was now about 1 meter away from Lin Feng, and his bloodthirsty eyes were staring at Lin Feng. He looked like a demon. Lin Feng's facial expression was still the same. He was calmly looking into these two eyes. With his determination, it was difficult for external things to affect or scare Lin Feng. Out of Lin Feng's body suddenly emerged a dense and thick battle energy. It wasn't as terrifying as the officer's qi, but it was piercingly cold and smelt like death. Even if it wasn't as strong as the powerful qi he was facing, it was still a brave move from Lin Feng. Boom! Lin Feng took a step forward. He surprisingly didn't move backward, but forward. After that step, only 2 steps were separating Lin Feng and Lei Qingtian. They both looked fierce and determined. The qi and the burning battle energy collided in the air. Lin Feng's long hair was fluttering from the wind created by the shockwaves. That entire scene was only about 10 seconds in length. Lei Qingtian's qi then slowly vanished. He had a smile on the corner of his mouth. Not bad. Not only didn't you move away from me, but you came closer. I like that, said Lei Qingtian while smiling wholeheartedly. He tapped Lin Feng's shoulders, which made his body shake. He was extremely strong. No wonder Fei likes him. For someone of his age, having a strength which exceeds the 5th Ling Qi layer is really good, said the left officer Feng Yuhan while nodding and smiling. The atmosphere in the tent wasn't serious and solemn at all anymore. If I'm not mistaken, he has already broken through to the 6th Ling Qi layer, right? Said the middle officer Ren Qingquang while smiling. Lin Feng slightly nodded and said, Officer Ren, you are right. You are not even 18 yet. Having reached such a cultivation level is quite impressive. Those who help us here are much weaker. You have unlimited possibilities with your talent. Too bad that you are not going to stay for very long amongst the army. Ren Qingquang's voice was filled with regret. Talented young cultivators didn't stay within the army. All they were seeking was enlightenment on the path of cultivation. Even when they fought on the side of the army, it was just to gain practical experience and become stronger. Situations where life and death were at stake helped them to become stronger. That kind of cultivator would leave the army after having completed their training. People like Liu Cang Lan were rare. Because of his function as general, he had many burdens and obligations. He had amazing talent and was constantly getting stronger even with these burdens. Being a general wasn't ordinary cultivation training. He had to motivate the hearts of the officers and the troops. Lin Feng's natural talent was much more frightening than Liu Cang Lan's talent. He was obviously not going to stay within the army. From the 4 officers, only Jiu Kai Zai hadn't said a word. He looked solemn and respectful. His facial expression looked like it had been frozen for 1,000 years. All right, you can go back to your positions. Kai Zai, you can stay here, said Liu Cang indifferently. The 3 officers nodded and left the tent. Lin Feng, shouted Jiu Kai Zai, who had been silent all this time. Huh! Lin Feng raised his head and looked Jiu Kai Zai, guessing that the man had something to tell him. Lin Feng in the Kai Zai troops, apart from me as an officer. There are 3 non-commissioned officers, 30 lieutenants, 300 sergeants, and 3,000 guards. In total, there are 28,521 Kai Zai armored horses. All our troops are elite fighters. Our strategy is to fight 1 against 10. Even though we have less troops than the other factions, if we attack, we win, said Jiu Kai Zai in a calm and solemn tone. His words were poignant. Besides, he surprisingly perfectly remembered the exact number of Kai Zai horses they had. It was incredible that he knew the exact number during battles. They could die at any moment, so it was difficult to establish accurate statistics. People would normally just have a general idea. Lin Feng, will you remember this? said Jiu Kaizai, which surprised Lin Feng. Why did Jiu Kaizai want Lin Feng to remember it? But Lin Feng still nodded and said, I will. Then it's good. Lin Feng, every single member of the Kaizai troops is an elite soldier. After each battle, remember how many we have lost. I will then know how many of our brothers have passed away. It will sadden me more with each death. So that next time, I will do my best and spare no efforts to greatly reduce the number of my brothers that have to die. Jiu Kaizai was speaking from his heart. Lin Feng deeply respected him. Jiu Kaizai was indubitably an outstanding officer who was like a brother to his troops, which is why he remembered all of them. Early in the morning, in the white fog, a bugle call filled the air, and everybody on the military site could hear it. In one tent, there was Lin Feng, and he was wearing red armor, which was the color of fresh blood. He raised his head and looked in the horizon. He said to himself, They have finally arrived. In the middle of the night, he had received the information that the troops of the Mo Yue country were already 50 kilometers away, but they weren't attacking. They were just setting up a campsite. The troops of the Zhu Yue country couldn't afford to neglect safety, and they had sentinels making rounds and watching every single action performed by the troops from the Mo Yue country. That bugle call, followed by the sounds of the war drums, probably meant the beginning of the war. The sound was unceasing, but there wasn't the least bit of chaos inside the camp. Instead, everyone was extremely organized. The battle could start at any moment. It was impossible for the troops to panic because of that. A few silhouettes appeared and were all wearing red armor in Lin Feng's tent. Their faces were covered by their helmets, but their expressions were sharp when looking towards Lin Feng. Follow me, said Lin Feng indifferently. Immediately after, he left the tent and jumped on his dragon colt horse. The others also calmly jumped on their Kaizai armored horses and followed him. The other Kaizai troops looked at Lin Feng and the people following him. There were about 40 people. Their armor was an even bloodier red than the other soldiers, to the extent that it was dazzling to the eye. It looked like the morning sun shining on a puddle of blood. 40 people wasn't enough to make a complete squad within the army either. In the army, sergeants controlled 100 people. Lin Feng and the others galloped past them at full speed. A short time after, they arrived in a place where the two military factions were facing each other. In front of Lin Feng, there was a vast black ocean of troops who were releasing a deadly qi. They were the soldiers of the Mo Yue country. Before, Lin Feng had never seen a battlefield except on television in his previous life. When he saw it, intense feelings invaded his heart. In the middle of all these troops, one person was like a grain of sand. These hundreds of thousands of people, if they all used a bow, they could kill a single opponent in a flash, even if they had broken through to the Xianxia layer. On the battlefield, extremely strong cultivators were rare, so relying on personal strength was too difficult. That's why Liu Cang Lan, back in the days, beheaded the leader of the enemy troops who was giving orders. Amongst the troops of the Zhu Yue country, the left, right, and middle troops were in perfect formation, but the Kaizai troops were dispersed across the army. Concerning the imperial city troops which followed Duan Tian Lang, they were in formation shoulder to shoulder with the middle troops. Liu Cang Lan, Jiu Kaizai, and Ren Qingquang were at the very front of the troops. Brother Liu, the enemy is arriving and they look terrifyingly strong. It seems like they have over 500,000 troops. How are we supposed to cope with them? Asked Duan Tian Lang indifferently while galloping towards Liu Cang Lan. Duan Tian Lang, do you think that the Prince of Mo Yue will directly attack us? Said Liu Cang Lan while turning his head around and looking at Duan Tian Lang. He sounded cold and indifferent. While two armies were facing each other, even if one was in numeral superiority, it was impossible for them to launch a direct attack. A war was about exchanging lives. Even if they won, the result would be tragic. Considering the reputation of Mo Yue, it was impossible for them to launch such an attack. Brother Liu, you always understand the enemy properly before the beginning of the war. I admire that, said Duan Tian Lang while smiling indifferently. It's just that there is a huge number of possibilities. What about the princess? She is amongst the troops right now. If something happens to her, who will bear the responsibility? I think that you should find a solution to win as soon as possible. The princess came with you, so it's your duty to ensure her security, said Liu Cang Lan while smiling coldly. The troops were going to engage in a close combat from morning to evening, and Duan Tian Lang was asking Liu Cang Lan to fight a solution to win as quickly as possible. Not only did he make him bear the responsibility for the battle, but was also making him responsible for the security of the princess. That was ridiculous. Brother, how can you talk that way? This territory is yours, I am a guest. Since it's that way, the princess, safety is in your hands. Obviously, if you don't care about that, you should remember that you took away the princess' personal guard, said Duan Tian Lang coldly while looking at Lin Feng. Duan Tian Lang, you are facing the enemy army, and surprisingly you are still in the mood for boring conversations and refuse to assume your own responsibilities, said Lin Feng while urging on his horse. Under his armor, his facial expression was extremely sharp. He then said, "If anything happens to the princess, I will die, but could it be that you are forgetting about your own responsibilities?" When he finished talking, Lin Feng didn't wait for Duan Tian Lang to reply and immediately urged on his horse, galloping towards Duan Xinyi. At that moment, Duan Xinyi was also wearing armor, but her beautiful eyes were not hidden by her helmet. In order to see, there was a slit for the eyes. Behind Lin Feng was a group of people wearing bright red armor. Their faces were entirely covered except for their eyes, which looked extremely sharp and cruel. "What are you doing here?" asked Yue Tianchen, who was protecting Duan Xinyi on her other side. When he saw Lin Feng, he looked vigilant and cold. "That's none of your business," replied Lin Feng coldly. He then handed over a helmet to Duan Xinyi and said, "Princess, that helmet will protect your face. It's better for you to wear it." "All right, thank you," said Duan Xinyi while putting it on her head. In case of sudden attack, that helmet would be much safer for her. "Lin Feng, you are my personal guard. Stay here and protect me," said Duan Xinyi with a beautiful smile on her face. In case of danger, her face would be protected. At that moment, she was wearing the helmet so only her beautiful eyes were visible. On the back of her horse, she looked majestic and heroic. Lin Feng was surprised and immediately nodded. "All right." Yue Tianchen stared at Lin Feng in an ice-cold way, but Lin Feng ignored him and gazed at the boundless distance. Suddenly, the army of the enemy appeared. Many people were mounted within the enemy army. A cloud of dust filled the air. They were about a kilometer away from the Zhu Yue army when they stopped. "We are the black guards of the Mo Yue country. 36 people who dares to fight us," said a loud and deep voice. The black guards of the Mo Yue country were like the Kaizai troops in Zhu Yue. They were the elite soldiers. Jiu Kaizai looked calm when he saw them and said, sounding indifferent, he said, "Don't fight." The Kaizai troops looked expressionless. They had no particular feeling. Orders were like mountains. They only obeyed orders and were never swayed away by their personal feelings. "Don't fight," said Duan Tian Lang while smiling coldly. He raised his head and said arrogantly, "The Kaizai troops are the elite forces of the Zhu Yue country, and today we are at war. Surprisingly, you said we're not fighting. Why are you ruining the troops' mood? What is your purpose?" "Duan Tian Lang, if you want to fight, then send your own troops," replied Jiu Kaizai coldly while glancing at Duan Tian Lang. The black guards were all outstanding. Not a single person was weak. Powerful chi was emerging from their bodies. No wonder that they were elite troops. "So that's how the Kaizai troops are? What a band of scoundrels. Even though I am not talented, I will also not move back," shouted Duan Tian Lang in an extremely loud voice so that everyone could hear him. In a flash, Duan Tian Lang moved all of his troops forward. Every day, he found the Kaizai troops more and more disappointing. First, they hadn't opened the city gate for him, and at that moment they didn't dare fight. Liu Cang Lan didn't deserve his nickname, the Divine Arrow. Amongst the people of the Celestial Academy, who is willing to fight? I can send out 35 elite troops and let you lead the battle, said Duan Tian Lang while galloping towards the students of the Celestial Academy. "Of course, if none of you wants to fight, I will send someone from the holy courtyard of Zhu Yue." "I want to fight," said someone at that moment amongst the people of the Celestial Academy. A young man came out, and energy was emerging from his body. "All right. Students of the holy courtyard of Zhu Yue and of the Celestial Academy are all outstanding disciples in the Zhu Yue country. 35 elite disciples. Come out and go fight along with that young man. Show them how majestic and prestigious our country is," said Duan Tian Lang heroically. "How strong are these black guards?" asked Lin Feng with a subtle question. 36 people, the weakest ones are at the 3rd Ling Chi layer, 10 of them are of the 4th Ling Chi layer, 6 of them at the 5th Ling Chi layer, 2 at the 6th one and 1 at the 7th, said Ba Dao in a low voice. Lin Feng was astonished. These black guards were strong. The weakest were at the 3rd Ling Chi layer. They were very strong. Surprisingly, there was even one at the 7th Ling Chi layer who alone could defeat 100 Kaizai troops. Jiu Kaizai had chosen not to fight. He obviously had a good reason. The Mo Yue country had directly sent such an elite formation of soldiers. This was a tactic of war. At that moment, the 36 people were already leaving. Lin Feng saw the chi that students of the Celestial Academy were releasing and said, "You cannot join the fight. You will all die." "Huh," said a young man while frowning and looking at Lin Feng. He then immediately replied, "Lin Feng, you and me are both military students. I thought that you were hot-blooded like me. I wouldn't have thought that you would be a coward." When he finished talking, that young man immediately galloped towards the Black Guards. When these Black Guards saw the Zhu Yue people arrive, they firmly held their spears. When the Zhu Yue cultivators arrived in front of them, they released a powerful chi, and they all threw their spears, which flew through the air at incredible speeds. At that moment, there were horses chaotically running around and neighing. The spears had all reached their destination, the hearts of the 36 Zhu Yue cultivators. 36 strong and famous Zhu Yue cultivators had just met a violent death. One spear had been enough. Lin Feng looked expressionless. He had warned them, but they hadn't listened to him. What else could he do? The 36 Black Guards took back their spears, went back in formation, and shouted. The Black Guards invite the Zhu Yue Kaizai troops come and fight. The Zhu Yue army was silently looking at that row of Black Guards. They were astonished. These 36 Black Guards were incredibly strong. These Black Guards and their spears were proud and despised the Zhu Yue army. They could kill people with a simple toss of their weapons. When they heard the invitation of the Black Guards, the Zhu Yue army remained silent. Glorious deaths, they deserve respect. Not all the students of the Celestial Academy are cowards who don't dare fight, said Duan Tian Lang in a low voice. Then, sounding inspiring, he said, "Amongst the geniuses of the Celestial Academy, who is willing to go and avenge your fellow students? Cowards who don't dare fight?" Lin Feng obviously understood whom Duan Tian Lang was talking about. Everybody did. As you said, we are bound by a common hatred for the enemy. The holy courtyard of Zhu Yue and the Celestial Academy are fighting as brothers. I heard that your son, Duan Han, is an outstanding genius. He has also come to the battlefield to acquire practical experience. I would like to invite Duan Han to regain our country's prestige, as our country has just been humiliated, said Lin Feng. Let Duan Han go and accomplish the heroic deed, said a person behind Lin Feng extremely loudly. Let Duan Han go and become a hero, shouted a person in the middle of Kaizai troops. These voices were deafening to Duan Han's ears. Duan Han and his father were staring at Lin Feng. How cruel and sly. They had almost forgotten their original evil and malicious intentions. You just said a moment ago that dying on the battlefield was a glorious death, worthy of respect. Duan Han is not a coward. He is extremely powerful. He would not be scared and turn down a fight. No matter what the result of the battle is, it doesn't matter. It is glorious and worthy of respect. Therefore, I want to invite Duan Han to fight for his country, said Lin Feng firmly. Let Duan Han go and fight, said another voice extremely loudly. Duan Tian Lang was fixedly and coldly staring at Lin Feng. That bastard was putting him in a situation which he could not get himself out of. If I want to fight, I can decide myself. What is the point in putting so much pressure on others? Shouted Duan Han to Lin Feng loudly enough so that everybody could hear him clearly. Shut up. When Duan Han finished talking, Lin Feng shouted even louder. You and your father are really shameless. I put pressure on you to go and fight. You don't even dare fight. Since the beginning, you have only sent students of the Celestial Academy to fight because you want them all to die. Lin Feng was surprisingly verbally attacking Duan Tian Lang and his son in the presence of all the troops. Everybody was stupefied, but the students of the Celestial Academy, who were initially not reacting, narrowed their eyes. They became aware of how malicious and sly Duan Tian Lang was being. Lin Feng, do you know to whom you are talking? Said Duan Tian Lang, sounding extremely evil. He was the chief commander of all the army, and Lin Feng surprisingly dared humiliate him. I am not under the authority of the chief commander, said Lin Feng coldly. Duan Tian Lang wanted to speak, but suddenly a cold voice spread. Duan Tian Lang, I let you enter the city for you to help us fight against the enemy, not for you to cause trouble here and act childishly. It was obviously Liu Cang Lan. Immediately after, he looked at Lin Feng and said, You contradicted Chief Commander Duan Tian Lang, and that is an offense. You go fight and atone for your crime with military accomplishments. Roger, General, nodded Lin Feng solemnly and respectfully. Immediately after, he looked in front of him and started galloping at full speed on the back of his dragon colt horse. He was closely followed by more than 30 fighters wearing blood-red armor. A cloud of dust rose around them. When the Black Guards saw Lin Feng and the others approach, they threw their spears at terrifying speeds which emitted whistling sounds as they pierced through the air. Powerful chi was emerging from their spears. The sounds of the spears piercing through the air spread across the battlefield. "Break!" said Lin Feng at that moment. Immediately after, all the fighters surrounding him took out weapons which diffused a resplendent glow and cut the spears down. PSSHHH, PSHHH. The crowd only saw that these spears, which were moving towards Lin Feng and all the others at full speed, had just been broken, and some had been split midair. What's going on? Everybody was shocked. How was that possible? Even though Lin Feng and his fighters were stronger than the opponents, it wasn't possible for them to be able to break those spears so easily. What sharp weapons? The crowd was looking at the weapons Lin Feng and the fighters were holding in their hands. They were extremely sharp. Go! After Lin Feng said that word, they galloped towards the opponents at full speed, and in the blink of an eye, blood splashed high into the air, and the sound of cutting flesh followed by horses neighing filled the air. Ba Dao's blade moved through the air and released tyrannical blade energy. His strength of the 6th Ling Chi layer meant death for all the Black Guards. Lin Feng's long sword was dazzling as he attacked the leader of the Black Guards, who was at the 7th Chi layer. His sword twinkled and immediately pierced through the atmosphere, releasing an insane amount of deadly energy. In the blink of an eye, half of the Black Guards were dead, and many of them were injured. Block, the leader of the Black Guards, blocked Lin Feng's sword while his face turned deathly pale. Since when were there such strong cultivators recruited into the Kai Zai troops? Invincible. In the middle of the fight, the Black Guards suddenly started turning around and insanely urging their horses to retreat. The whole Zhu Yue army was dumbstruck. "Kill," said Lin Feng. Everybody understood clearly. They all readied their weapons as they caught up with the Black Guards and gave them a bloody, violent death. Lin Feng on his dragon colt horse and the others on their Kai Zai armored horses continued chasing the remaining Black Guards who were still trying to escape. At that moment, a strong and robust silhouette jumped from his Kai Zai armored horse, roared loudly, and stamped onto the ground. A huge crater appeared in the earth under the Black Guards, making them all collapse into the crater, unable to escape. Break, the leader of the Black Guards, grabbed his second spear and thrust it into the wall of the crater. A loud rumble filled the air. The ground was shaking. A hole had appeared in the wall where the spear landed. The chief of the Black Guards wanted to escape through that hole. "Stay there!" Immediately, vines appeared and wrapped around the Black Guards, constricting their bodies and making them unable to move. Tyrannical blade. In the air appeared an illusionary blade which immediately cut downwards. Many of the Black Guards were struck. In the blink of an eye, only one of the Black Guard remained, their leader at the 7th Ling Chi layer. Since the beginning of the fight, only the time of one deep breath had elapsed. "Arg!" shouted the leader of the Black Guards. His spear seemed incredibly powerful. He jumped off his horse and his body flew into the air. Lin Feng looked calm and solemn. He actually gave his own helmet to Duan Tian Lang, so he hadn't been wearing one himself. His handsome face was visible, and his long hair was fluttered with the wind. His body slightly urged his horse on. Immediately after, he jumped into the air. At that moment, an incredible amount of battle energy was burning all around his body. In the sky, an illusionary black sword appeared, a deadly yet divine sword. "You attacked my comrades, which is a crime. I must kill you," said Lin Feng in a solemn and calm tone. His body was still in the air. He took a deep breath, and his deadly black sword fell from the sky. PSSHHH. The black sword illusion fell down from the sky and cut the body of the Black Guard leader down the middle, and his body split into 2 pieces. He didn't even have the time to let out a horrible shriek. He was just silently cut into 2. Boom, 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 boom. That attack had been so incredible that everybody's heart was pounding loudly in their chests. An illusionary sword in the air had cut the Black Guard's leader into 2. How powerful. Besides, the one who had launched that attack was still a young man. At that moment, that handsome young man jumped back onto his horse and calmly returned to the army. The entire army was looking at him and were frantically trying to get a better look. They wanted to see that young man more clearly. Woo! The sky was shaking. The Kai Zai troops' hearts were filled with burning enthusiasm. It had been a long time since they had had that feeling. They hadn't thought that such a young man could awake such feelings in their hearts. Jiu Kai Zai smiled indifferently. He calmly looked at Liu Cang Lan and said, "General, I see your image in him." Liu Cang Lan turned his head and smiled back at Jiu Kai Zai. "I haven't seen you smile in a long time." said Liu Cang Lan, and then turned around. The Mo Yue army was surprisingly turning around and retreating. They had come for power and prestige, but had to move back because of Lin Feng. "I am not as gifted as him," said Liu Cang Lan discreetly to Jiu Kai Zai, which made him shiver. Immediately after, he smiled again. Lin Feng's spirit was stronger, and he had a higher natural talent as well. Lin Feng calmly returned to Duan Xinyi's side as she took off her helmet. Her long and delicate fingers moved her hair aside and looked at Lin Feng with a huge smile on her face. Lin Feng was bewitched. Her smile was truly enchanting. Only Duan Tian Lang and his son had hideous expressions on their faces, especially Duan Han. Back in the days, he used to think that he was better than Lin Feng. At that moment, though, he was weaker than Lin Feng and far from being able to catch up with his level of strength. "Lin Feng," said Liu Cang Lan in a loud voice. "General," replied Lin Feng, "you are now a lieutenant. You are now in charge of your own Kai Zai unit called the Celestial Sword, and you are directly under Jiu Kai Zai." With the military merits of slaughtering the Black Guards and forcing the enemy army to retreat, Liu Cang Lan obviously had enough to grant Lin Feng a lieutenant position. Lin Feng had just displayed how great his power was. Nobody was going to have any objections. Lin Feng gratefully accepts. Lin Feng galloped towards Jiu Kai Zai and said with a respectful tone, "Officer, Lin Feng, your tent is still in the same place. Now you are a lieutenant, so feel at ease within the Kai Zai troops. You can do as you wish with the soldiers. If there is any danger, you can handle it as you wish, but I want these two back when you are done. If they leave, I'm losing 2 lieutenants," said Jiu Kai Zai while pointing at Han Man and Po Jun, who were behind Lin Feng. "Officer, does this mean we can join the Celestial Sword unit?" said Han Man while looking excited. If he could work with Lin Feng, he wouldn't care about his lieutenant status and would follow Lin Feng's orders. "No, return to your units now," said Jiu Kai Zai. Han Man and Po Jun smiled wryly and said, "Roger, officer." After saying that, they smiled wryly while looking at Lin Feng and immediately went back to their units. "Lin Feng, these 2 guys, I still need them. Sooner or later, they will be under your command," said Jiu Kai Zai with a mysterious tone. Immediately after, he added, "You can go now." "All right," said Lin Feng while slightly nodding and moved aside. "Lin Feng." At that moment, a clear and distinct voice emerged. Lin Feng turned around and saw Duan Xinyi waving to him. "You guys can wait for me here," said Lin Feng to Ba Dao and the others. Immediately after, he went towards the princess and asked, "What's the problem?" "There must be a problem in order for me to speak with you. You are my personal guard," said Duan Xinyi while giving a sweet smile towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't know how to reply. "Lin Feng, come with me to my tent. Qiu Kao will make us some tea and we can talk for a while," said Duan Xinyi. Lin Feng remained silent. "You don't feel like it? Well, forget about it then. You can leave," said Duan Xinyi when she saw that Lin Feng remained silent. She looked disappointed, yet tried to smile. Lin Feng turned his horse around. Duan Xinyi nibbled on her lip, and a bitter feeling invaded her heart. Usually, it was young men who would always chase her, but she always rejected them. She didn't even look at the handsome young men in the city. However, she was interested in Lin Feng, that frivolous and unrestrained young man. She started to have feelings for him. She had finally gathered the courage to invite him, and he rejected her like she did with all the noble young men before. "You guys can go back to the tent without me," said Lin Feng, which reached Duan Xinyi's ears. She then saw him turn around. A sweet and soft smile appeared on her face. Her grief turned into happiness. Initially, Lin Feng didn't refuse her offer. He was just ordering his troops to go back. "Princess," said Lin Feng while moving back to Duan Xinyi. "Let's go." Duan Xinyi's hair was floating on the wind while the horse galloped. At that moment, many people were following her. Lin Feng also closely followed alongside her and hadn't noticed that some people were evilly looking at the couple. "HMPH," groaned to someone near Liu Cang Lan. Liu Cang Lan was stupefied. He then looked at the angered person and said, "Fei Fei, you have to handle things like this properly." "Handle what properly?" said Liu Fei while gnashing her teeth. Immediately after, she left. She was secretly cursing at Lin Feng in her heart. What a pervert. "General, it seems like Princess Duan Xinyi is interested in Lin Feng. She'll become Fei Fei's rival in the future," said Jiu Kai Zai in a low voice. These older men were slightly angry at the princess. They noticed that Duan Xinyi didn't look at Lin Feng the same way she looked at other people. Duan Xinyi always smiled at people in a friendly manner, but when she smiled to Lin Feng, it was more than that. It was soft, sweet, and tender. The first awakening of love, tender feelings like water. Girls couldn't hide such feelings. Everybody could see them in their facial expression, just like Liu Fei. Liu Cang Lan smiled wryly and shook his head. He then quietly looked at the silhouette leaving. The silhouette was wearing armor, but he didn't forget that underneath they were still holy and pure. As before, he was amazed. Duan Xinyi's tent was tastefully furnished. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and tidy, which made it easy to set one's mind at ease and feel relaxed. At that moment, Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi were sitting on the floor by a hardwood table. "Princess, Master Lin, tea is ready." Qiu Cao arrived in front Duan Xinyi and Lin Feng and served them some tea. Lin Feng hastily took his cup of tea while smiling and said, "Girl, there is no need to stick with such formalities." Lin Feng wasn't used to being served by someone else. "Master Lin, you are the princess guest. This is my duty," said the servant while smiling. She had 2 dimples appear on her cheeks when she smiled. She was extremely cute. She was very young, about 15 years old. Lin Feng was only smiling but didn't say anything. Actually, Qiu Cao was also a slave. She was already very lucky to be able to work for the princess. Besides, Duan Xinyi seemed to treat her well. Qiu Cao respected Duan Xinyi but didn't fear her. Duan Xinyi was the farthest thing from a cruel person. "Princess, the battlefield is such a dangerous place. Why did you need to come here?" asked Lin Feng, who didn't understand why Duan Xinyi was there. What was the point of having the princess on the battlefield? "I've spent too much time in the imperial palace. I was breathing the same stuffy air every single day, so thought that I had to see something else, and decided to come and see the brave and courageous soldiers on the battlefield," said Duan Xinyi in a soft voice while smiling. Many people were dreaming of living in the imperial palace, but those who really lived in it had the feeling that it was like a prison and needed to see the outside world. "Lin Feng, do you like the zither?" suddenly asked Duan Xinyi. Lin Feng slightly nodded and said, "I do. I will play the zither for you." When Duan Xinyi saw that Lin Feng nodded, she smiled and looked excited. At that moment, Qiu Cao went and picked up an ancient zither. She cleaned the table and put the zither on the spotless table. It was a very cozy feeling. Duan Xinyi was smiling. She put both of her hands on the zither and started playing slowly. Lin Feng looked at Duan Xinyi. She was beautiful, graceful, and elegant. Once in a while, she would raise her head and smile. That smile was enchanting. Regardless of social status, her beauty and elegance sufficed to make any normal man go crazy. No wonder every single noble young man hoped to marry the princess. Such a beautiful woman who on top of that had the status of princess and possessed a powerful blood spirit. She could tempt most men. Duan Xinyi started playing a melody which made Lin Feng imagine a calm stream running through a bamboo forest. Zither connoisseurs could easily tell what kind of personality and temperament a person had when they listened to them playing the zither. She was as cool as a mountain stream, like an orchid in the middle of a peaceful mountain. Lin Feng slowly closed his eyes and calmly listened to the wonderful music. He was feeling happy. Being with Duan Xinyi, he didn't feel like he needed to be cautious. He could relax. He felt joyful in his heart. Duan Xinyi, once in a while, was raising her head to look at Lin Feng. When she saw that Lin Feng was closing his eyes and seemed to be completely relaxed, the smile on her face was becoming sweeter and sweeter. Inside the tent, the atmosphere was calm and peaceful. Only the sound of the zither filled the air. But at that moment, Lin Feng, who was firmly closing his eyes while listening to the music, suddenly had a strange sensation. He suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were completely black and expressionless. The world around him had become slow, and he was now within his world of darkness. Without the slightest hesitation, he grabbed a dagger and slashed through the air. "Catcha!" His dagger ended up cutting an arrow down mid-air, which passed near Lin Feng's cheek. A strong wind was blowing against the tent and raised its heavy curtains. Immediately after, a silhouette flickered through the air like an illusion. Lin Feng could feel the danger incoming. Lin Feng raised his dagger again as he could feel a sword moving towards him. Lin Feng moved his dagger towards the illusionary figure, but it had no effect. PSSSHH. PSHHH. Lin Feng's dagger arrived at the enemy's chest. But what shocked him was the opponent used his right hand to block Lin Feng's and used his left hand to throw an extremely sharp arrow towards the princess behind Lin Feng. The entire situation happened at the speed of lightning. Even though the opponent didn't care about his own life, they were determined to kill the princess before they died. An assassin! Lin Feng's heart was pounding. The opponent's arrow, which he had thrown, was much too quick. It had almost reached its destination, and Lin Feng was unable to stop it. And if he didn't block it, Princess Duan Xinyi would definitely die. That assassin was at the 5th Lingqi layer. That sword was extremely brutal, and the assassin was determined to exchange their life for the princess' life. 8 strikes of desolation. Without hesitating, Lin Feng launched his 8 strikes of desolation, but it only caused the arrow to deviate slightly. As if Lin Feng had anticipated this, he raised his hand at the speed of lightning and launched his chi forward to block the arrow. PSHH, PSHHH, Lin Feng's chi only barely struck against the arrow to slow it, but the arrow still pierced through it. Xinyi, dodge, shouted Lin Feng furiously. Lin Feng's sword was still in the opponent's chest. Lin Feng released an incredible amount of sword energy inside the assassin's body. The assassin met a terrifyingly brutal death. PSHHH, Lin Feng turned around and his face turned deathly pale. He only barely saw the arrow penetrate into flesh. But it wasn't the princess at all, it was Qiu Cao. A moment before, Qiu Cao had thrown herself in front of Duan Xinyi in order to protect her. Qiu Cao, shouted Duan Xinyi with a sorrowful scream. After that, a hole appeared in the roof of the tent and vines descended from the sky, grabbed Duan Xinyi's body and lifted her into the air. She is staying here, shouted Lin Feng. He jumped up in the air and slashed out with the chi from his long sword. At the same time, another silhouette fell from the sky. A long blade struck against the sword chi of Lin Feng and destroyed it. Duan Xinyi's silhouette in the blink of eye disappeared from the tent and was taken away by the vines. Lin Feng was astonished. His face was deathly pale. What a skillful attack. Besides, even the weakest person was at the 5th Lingqi layer. Lin Feng alone couldn't block all of them. An endless chi suddenly emerged from Lin Feng's sword, and it was followed by a horrible shriek. The energy from the opponent's sword was completely dispersed. Lin Feng was furious and launched a lethal, unavoidable attack at the opponent. Boom! The sword chi caused the tent to explode into small pieces. Lin Feng looked around at his surroundings. He looked furious. When Lin Feng saw the opponents attempting to escape, he immediately jumped up into the air in pursuit, but at that moment a fist struck his face, sending him backwards. "Get out of my way!" shouted Lin Feng extremely loudly when he saw the armored person blocking his way. Lin Feng had been pushed back to the tent by that powerful strike to his face. "How is Her Majesty the Princess?" asked the person while looking at the tent. When that person saw that Lin Feng wasn't replying, they continued. "What have you done to the princess?" Lin Feng had the sensation that the assassins were already close to escaping. He had no time for useless conversations. He moved forwards and brandished his sword. "HMPH!" The armored person smiled coldly and shouted, "Arrows ready?" When they finished talking, a group of silhouettes suddenly came into vision and raised their bows. They were all aiming at Lin Feng. At that moment, a sharp force rushed towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's facial expression changed. He knew that he was trapped. He quickly retreated and asked the armored person, "Was it you?" That person ignored Lin Feng's question and shouted in an extremely cold voice, "What have you done to the princess?" When he finished talking, he took a step towards the half-destroyed tent. He then saw that there was only a female's corpse, however it was not the princess, instead it was Cao Qiu. Obviously, the princess wasn't there anymore. "Hand over the princess!" shouted the armored person. His facial expression was extremely sharp. He slightly raised his hand, and at that moment, the myriad of silhouettes pulled back the string of their bows, ready to fire towards Lin Feng at any moment. Lin Feng suddenly smiled and laughed insolently. His 2 dark and expressionless eyes were staring at that person, and he said in an ice-cold tone, "Not only do you plan to assassinate the princess, but you also want to make up false charges against me in order to kill me. I don't understand what you're saying," said the person while staring at Lin Feng in a cold and indifferent way. He then said, "How dare you mention the princess, life, and your own life in the same sentence? You're thinking too highly of yourself. Even though your status of lieutenant was granted to you by Liu Cang Lan, today, you killed the princess, servant, and helped kidnap the princess. If you don't provide explanations, you will die here." Lin Feng was smiling coldly. How could he explain things clearly? At the moment when the princess was being kidnapped, they were all waiting close to the tent. How could they have not seen the kidnappers escaping? Besides, at the moment when Lin Feng was chasing the kidnappers, they had intercepted Lin Feng and stopped his pursuit. Of course, they had prepared this because they wanted to take Lin Feng's life. The fact that Lin Feng had killed the princess, servant, and kidnapped the princess spread very quickly amongst the troops. An incredible amount of people were heading towards the princess, wrecked tent. In the blink of an eye, the situation became chaotic. Duan Tian Lang had also come once he heard the news. Lin Feng, the princess was kind to you. You are her personal guard, and surprisingly you dare commit such a crime now. Tell us where the princess is, shouted Duan Tian Lang while staring at Lin Feng. Lin Feng couldn't provide an explanation. Even if Lin Feng provided an explanation, nobody was going to believe him. Duan Tian Lang and the others had already declared him as an offender. As far as they were concerned, Lin Feng was the one who had killed Qiu Cao and kidnapped the princess. At that moment, Lin Feng wasn't sure if Duan Tian Lang was responsible or it was another person within the military. Duan Tian Lang, are you not the person at the origin of this? Said Lin Feng coldly. If it was really Duan Tian Lang, that was really too shameless. The first arrow was actually aimed at Princess Duan Xinyi. If Lin Feng hadn't done his best to intercept it, Duan Xinyi would have died. You will never stop until you're dead, shouted Duan Tian Lang in an ice-cold tone. He then immediately continued. I will give you some time to think. If you don't tell where the princess is, I will kill you as punishment. When he finished talking, he lit an oil lamp, and then a deadly energy emerged from his body as he moved towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked cold and indifferent. A murderous light flashed in his eyes. If Duan Tian Lang was really at the origin of this was a good opportunity. Why wasn't he killing him on the spot, though, and provided him with time to think about giving him an answer? This short time was enough for the news to spread to Liu Cang Lan, and for him to quickly rush to the location. Lin Feng didn't understand Duan Tian Lang's intentions. Lin Feng, however, could not determine whether the princess was still alive or not. He wanted to go and look for Duan Xinyi instead of wasting time here. After all, she had been kidnapped, and he was responsible for protecting her. However, considering the number of arrows aiming at him and the incredibly strong soldiers surrounding him, rushing to save her would have been idiotic. His life was currently in danger. He slowly turned around and saw that the oil lamp would soon burn out. The ground started to shake. An incredible number of horses rushed towards the campsite. The tent was completely surrounded by soldiers in an instant. Duan Tian Lang, do you think that you can act as you please here? At that moment, a voice spread through the atmosphere. Liu Cang Lan appeared in the air with his bow on his back. Behind him, the officer of the Kaizai troops, Jiu Kaizai, was closely following. He immediately moved next to Lin Feng and ignored everybody else. Liu Cang Lan, Lin Feng plotted against the princess and did not protect her. She is nowhere to be found. Why do you choose to side with him? What evil intentions are you harboring? Said Duan Tian Lang. I don't care who kidnapped the princess, but since such a short time has passed, looking for the princess within the campsite would be the best solution rather than wasting time here. She would not have been able to leave the camp. However, you have brought all of your soldiers here and created a chaotic environment and spread rumors. How does that affect the morale for our army? You wouldn't be doing this on purpose to cause harm to Lin Feng. Liu Cang Lan's words surprised Lin Feng. As expected, Liu Cang Lan was very experienced and proved he clearly understood the most important aspects of the situation. Duan Tian Lang was an aristocrat and the chief commander. How could he not understand what was most important in this situation? In such a situation, the most important thing was to immediately search for the missing princess, and it was not use his army to trap Lin Feng in an attempt to punish him. The fact that he had given Lin Feng some time seemed to have something to do with Liu Cang Lan. I obviously understand that, but I have given him the time it takes for an oil lamp to burn, yet Lin Feng still cannot tell us where the princess is. Liu Cang Lan, you are a general. Punishing Lin Feng is your duty, but instead, you are siding with a criminal. If you don't move out of the way, then do not blame me for not showing mercy, said Duan Tian Lang in a calm and respectful tone, as if he held friendly feelings towards Liu Cang Lan and did not want to fight. A smile appeared on Liu Cang Lan's face as he said, inviting you to come here to fight our common enemy was a huge mistake. Duan Tian Lang, you are a traitor. Kaizai armored cavalry, are you there? Shouted Liu Cang Lan furiously. We are. The atmosphere suddenly filled with the shouts of Kaizai armored cavalry. The Kaizai horses neighed, and the atmosphere was filled with a deadly qi. Duan Tian Lang's troops were chaotic, and their morale was unstable. Liu Cang Lan collaborates with Lin Feng, a criminal who has kidnapped the princess. He is clearly a traitor. They both deserve the death sentence by law. Kill them. Duan Tian Lang then shouted coldly, release your arrows. When Duan Tian Lang finished talking, an endless sea of arrows spread through the air towards Liu Cang Lan and Lin Feng. Duan Tian Lang had actually given his army the order to kill them. "Kill them all," shouted Jiu Kaizai, who started galloping towards the army while shooting powerful arrows from his bow. Immediately, soldiers started giving horrible shrieks of pain. They all came from the soldiers who were surrounded by the Kaizai armored cavalry. The Kaizai armored cavalry were mercilessly slaughtering those soldiers. Duan Tian Lang had attempted to kill General Liu Cang Lan. The Kaizai armored cavalry troops were furious. The Kaizai troops had already killed a large number of Duan Tian Lang's troops. Duan Tian Lang was furious. In the blink of an eye, a civil war had begun. Everybody was filled with cold, killing intent. What was going on? How could such a situation come about? It was because of Lin Feng. Nobody could control the situation any longer. Soldiers from the same army were fighting against each other and dying. It was as if everything had already been planned since the moment when Lin Feng entered the princess' tent, as if they were doomed from that moment. In the distance, a bugle call could be heard, but most of the Zhu Yue troop could barely hear it. At that moment, Liu Cang Lan and Lin Feng's faces turned deathly pale. The scariest thing about that bugle call was that it came from the Mo Yue country army, which was moving towards them to launch an attack. "Duan Tian Lang, order your troops to stand down," shouted Liu Cang Lan while stretching his hand and breaking an arrow in front of him. He was furious. If the Mo Yue country army had launched an attack, they were not prepared to fight. It would even lead to a crushing defeat. At that moment, he could just hope that the troops would stop fighting against each other and the army could focus on Mo Yue country. "Stand down. Liu Cang Lan, you are a traitor and attempted to collaborate with someone who assassinated the princess. Even if I am not strong enough, I will fight you to the death," said Duan Tian Lang in an ice-cold tone. Liu Cang Lan had a cold sweat dripping down his back. Duan Tian Lang was completely shameless. He was ready to let tens of thousands die. Liu Cang Lan jumped up in the air. He shouted furiously, "All the troops of the Zhu Yue country, stop fighting each other and fight against the real enemy, otherwise we will all be buried here." Whoosh! At that moment, a whistling sound spread through the air. An arrow was hurtling towards Liu Cang Lan at full speed. "Duan Tian Lang, you traitor!" shouted Liu Cang Lan furiously. He raised his hand and disintegrated the arrow into powder. His body was descending while taking Lin Feng with him at the same time, and he shouted, "All the troops of Zhu Yue, listen to my orders. Retreat to the Duan Ren border." Liu Cang Lan was well aware of the situation. The troops were already in total disorder. They would never be able to resist an enemy attacking them. "Kaizai troops, listen to the orders. Retreat to the Duan Ren border," shouted Jiu Kaizai furiously. The horses started galloping in a mad retreat. They didn't continue fighting and immediately retreated to the Duan Ren border. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Horrifying whistling sounds filled the air. Liu Cang Lan raised his head and looked at the sky. His face turned deathly pale as the blood drained from his face. In the sky, there was a cloud of arrows ready to rain destruction. There were so many arrows that the sky could no longer be seen. The area was completely covered with arrows. In a flash, Liu Cang Lan noticed that the entire area had turned dark and the cloud of arrows was falling towards them. Loud mournful cries and horrible shrieks filled the atmosphere. That moment seemed like the doomsday for the Zhu Yue country. Lin Feng grabbed his sword and raised it in the air. It was dazzling to the eyes and resplendent. When the arrows came into contact with the sword, they were pulverized into dust. The arrows continued falling from the sky for a full 10 breaths of time. The sky was visible again, but at that moment, the tents of the Zhu Yue campsite were completely destroyed, and countless corpses were lying down on the ground. "Retreat! Retreat!" The soldiers were going insane. Many people were shouting to retreat. If they retreated to Duan Ren border, there would still be some hope. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sky turned black again. Arrows filled the sky and started to descend upon them again. As before, horrible shrieks endlessly spread throughout the camp. At that moment, horses were galloping at full speed, which made the ground shake. It seemed like death was galloping towards the troops of Zhu Yue. The armored horses of Mo Yue, after 2 arrow volleys, were already galloping towards them to launch an attack. Lin Feng looked at the ground and saw the blood of his dragon colt horse. Lin Feng grabbed his sword and didn't move backwards. Instead, he moved towards the armored horses of Mo Yue. Die! When the soldiers on their armored horses saw that Lin Feng wasn't retreating, they rushed towards him with killing intent while raising their spears. Lin Feng's sword was quiet, dazzling, and ice-cold. The cold and resplendent flow emitted by the sword seemed like it could cover the entire country. The cavalry which were charging towards him were suddenly cut into two pieces. The upper half was flying through the air and the lower half remained on horseback. "Deadly sword!" Lin Feng's expression was ice cold. Then his expressionless and dark eyes could be seen. Lin Feng continued to kill the enemies which rushed towards him. The cavalry was being massacred. Lin Feng continued moving forwards, attacking large groups of enemies with his sword. One sword swing and a dozen enemies would die. But at that moment, Lin Feng was already completely surrounded by the enemy troops. They weren't moving towards him at full speed anymore in small groups. They all raised their spears towards him. Immediately after, they all charged towards Lin Feng. If they all attacked him, Lin Feng would certainly die. The terrifying force emanating from Lin Feng's deadly sword was enveloping the enemies, causing them all to feel an immense fear. They all had a cold sweat running down their backs. "Lonely sword!" Lin Feng's body spun at full speed as he attacked enemies in every direction. Every person touched by his sword would meet an incredibly violent death. A single attack was enough to kill dozens of soldiers where they stood. While meeting his enemies face to face, a brave and courageous cultivator would always win. Lin Feng jumped into the air and landed on a horse. He released a cold, sharp energy into the atmosphere. In the blink of an eye, the horse quickly became docile. Lin Feng cut off its reins and galloped forward at full speed. His sword was emitting a radiant glow. A single strike would mean death. Lin Feng was a single mounted soldier cutting his way through the enemy army like an invincible war god. Duan Ren border was only about 5 kilometers away from where the soldiers were stationed. Even though it was a very short distance, the landscape had turned into a bloody hell. There were countless corpses which now decorated the landscape. There were 3,000 archers situated above the Duan Ren border. They were all the most elite archers. Each time they saw the Mo Yue troops approach, they filled the sky with their arrows. The passage leading to the Duan Ren border was narrow and could only accommodate a few people. Even if they tried to hide from the arrows, they would not have anywhere to hide. This is why the Mo Yue troops didn't dare enter. They did not know how to avoid the arrows raining down on them. Another reason why the Mo Yue troops would not enter the narrow passage is that there was a man blocking the passageway. If that man guards the pass, 10,000 soldiers cannot get through. That man was Liu Cang Lan, the divine arrow. The Zhu Yue troops could only stay behind him or climb on up the cliffs of the Duan Ren border, waiting for the enemy. If the Mo Yue troops arrived, Liu Cang Lan would inevitably kill them. Liu Cang Lan's arrows never missed its target, and his arrows were always deadly. While looking at the Zhu Yue troops being massacred on the horizon, Liu Cang Lan had the feeling that his heart was being stabbed. Lin Feng arrived in front of Liu Cang Lan on his new horse. He immediately got down and stood to Liu Cang Lan's side. He was calmly looking at the countless deaths on the horizon. These troops were all dying because of Duan Tian Lang's grudge against Lin Feng. Duan Tian Lang! Lin Feng felt an uncontrollable killing intent towards Duan Tian Lang. A few 100,000 lives would be lost. What did that mean to Duan Tian Lang? Nothing. Why did Duan Tian Lang act in such a way? Because he had caused such a large distraction within the encampment and refused to stop the fight. He had given the Mo Yue country an opportunity to attack. Besides, it seemed like Mo Yue knew about chaos and came to seize that opportunity. Enemies were coming in larger amounts, but each time they were killed by Liu Cang Lan at the entrance of Duan Ren border. From the top of the hills, it was easy to kill the approaching enemies while remaining safe. In the distance, it seemed like the Mo Yue troops had already slaughtered the surplus of Zhu Yue troops. Kaizai horses were galloping towards the Duan Ren border. However, as the Kaizai armored horses neared the Duan Ren border, they all stopped. The Duan Ren border was the last stop before the Zhu Yue country. It was the last checkpoint where the Zhu Yue country could protect themselves. The Mo Yue country knew this perfectly well. While standing on the hills of Duan Ren border, they could easily kill the approaching enemies. From the top, not only could they easily kill people, but they would also be able to let the Kaizai troops safely pass. When using a bow from a high vantage point, a single person could kill 10 people. Killing 100 enemies was even normal. The Mo Yue troops were not going to foolishly rush towards the Duan Ren border. There were too many people that had climbed to the top of the cliffs. If they wanted to go through, the Mo Yue troops would have to sacrifice troops by the 10,000s, which would be a great loss. Liu Cang Lan looked at the huge Mo Yue army while shaking in anger. They were suffering a crushing defeat. That battle was all about slaughtering the Zhu Yue army. The Zhu Yue army couldn't compete with the Mo Yue army any longer. A moment before, when he had returned to Duan Ren border, there were only 100,000 soldiers left, and amongst them, many were injured. Almost all their troops had been killed during that battle. During the inner chaos, the Mo Yue troops had moved rapidly, leaving them no chance to resist. All they could do was run away. How could they resist to an army composed of 500,000 attacking when they were unprepared? An incredible amount of people had already been killed. At that moment, in front of the troops that had stopped, a silhouette slowly appeared. It was a young man. His face looked pale, but his two eyes looked sharp and cruel, making people want to prostrate themselves before him. This person was the enemy prince. "General Divine Arrow," said the young man. His voice was low, but it pierced through Liu Cang Lan and the others. "Mo Yue," said Liu Cang Lan in an ice-cold tone while looking at that young man. "General Divine Arrow, you have been protecting the Duan Ren border for many years. That is a great military accomplishment, and you are a legendary figure. Nobody has ever been able to pass through the Duan Ren border. I, Mo Yue, have always admired you for that. I am very happy to meet you today," said Mo Yue while calmly sitting on his horse and looking towards Liu Cang Lan, slightly bowing in respect. He respected the general of Zhu Yue. The general of a massacred army has no need for military accomplishments. Liu Cang Lan sounded saddened. They had already lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and it was his fault. His heart was still bleeding over his mistake. "What happened is not your fault. If you decided to come over to my Mo Yue country, I, Mo Yue, would welcome you and even grant you with the status of a commander," said Mo Yue in an extremely polite tone. Even though he had a high status, he was indeed a prince. There wasn't the slightest bit of arrogance in his voice. He even bowed in front of Liu Cang Lan. Wasn't this a major event? "A victory is a victory, a defeat is a defeat. What is the point in speaking about it?" said Liu Cang Lan while shaking his head. "Thank you for your kindness, but I refuse. I will show you somebody and you will understand," said Mo Yue while waving his hand. Someone next to him moved, and then a few silhouettes appeared. Amongst them was a beautiful young woman who was trapped by a vine. She was brought to the front of others. "Princess?" Lin Feng and Liu Cang Lan were completely astonished, especially Lin Feng. A thought flashed through Lin Feng's mind. Was she a hostage? How could this happen? How could the princess be in Mo Yue's hands? Could it be that the assassin who captured the princess wasn't Duan Tian Lang, but people under Mo Yue's control? But why had he been ambushed by soldiers of Duan Tian Lang who wanted to kill him? Lin Feng had no idea what was happening. At that moment, Mo Yue looked at Lin Feng, smiled, and said, "Your name is Lin Feng, right?" Lin Feng was stupefied when he heard Mo Yue. Mo Yue slowly started speaking. "In a towering rage, I rest under the whistling sound of rain. Gazing into the distance, looking up to the heavens, I utter a long and loud cry. My chest feels painful. 30 soldiers now with the dust and earth, the moon and the clouds stretching as far as can see. The young man's hair turns white. He is filled with sorrow. The humiliation of Duan Ren. When the officials hate, they destroy. On the back of the armored horses, going to the mountains armed with flowers. With magnificent ideals in my mind, yet starvation filling my stomach, I eat their flesh. To settle my thirst, I drink their blood. Clearing from the beginning until the end, the mountains and lakes, moving towards the heavens." Mo Yue's voice was solemn and respectful. His voice was filled with ardor and lofty sentiments. Liu Cang Lan and Lin Feng were stupefied. Those who can sing with such spirit. "Lin Feng, if you are willing to come and join Mo Yue, I will welcome you as well. If you wish, we could even become sworn brothers." Welcome him and become sworn brothers. The Prince of Mo Yue, Mo Yue, surprisingly attached great importance to Lin Feng. "If you accept my offer, I will, of course, not harm the princess. She will even become your wife," continued Mo Yue while smiling. From Lin Feng's expression, Mo Yue had understood that Lin Feng cared about the princess's safety. Liu Cang Lan looked at Lin Feng. He remembered that was the song which Lin Feng had sung. Surprisingly, Mo Yue knew about it as well. Even though they both remained brave, they were doomed. The Mo Yue troops were soon going to enter Duan Ren border and kill them all. "Are you the one who sent the assassins to kidnap the princess?" asked Lin Feng. "You don't need to doubt anything. I will show you and you will understand," said Mo Yue while clapping his hands. Someone moved to his side on horseback, raised his head and took off his helmet. When the face appeared, Lin Feng's expression turned ice cold. "It's you," said Lin Feng, whose eyes revealed clear killing intent. It was the high-ranking soldier who had blocked Lin Feng's path. He was the one who plotted against the princess. You understand now. I knew everything about your army, and even knew about the tensions which existed between you and Duan Tian Lang, said Mo Yue indifferently. He sounded very calm. Lin Feng looked at Mo Yue with a cold look and then slowly said, "You were able to create chaos amongst our army using such a tactic. It is indeed a very good method. You are clearly a fierce and ambitious person." Lin Feng wasn't using a polite tone. Even though there was tension within their army, managing to create such chaos, that was a flawless attack. The game of war was a deadly one. It was filled with people who would be stepped on like insects. Falling into someone's trap could be fatal. One careless move and the whole game is lost. They had been careless once and gave Mo Yue a great opportunity. That had led to the downfall of their army. "If you and the general come to my country, you will both be heroes," continued Mo Yue. He really wanted them to join him. Lin Feng and Liu Cang Lan were, however, both shaking their heads. "I, Mo Yue, will welcome both of you at any time." Mo Yue then turned his head around and said indifferently, "Set up an encampment 2 kilometers from here." When he finished talking, his army began to move. For them, orders must be followed. Mo Yue was like their god. "Zhu Yue army, listen to my words. I want you to withdraw from the Duan Ren border. In 3 days, if you haven't followed my instructions, I will behead the princess," said Mo Yue in a loud voice. The whole army was shaking after hearing this. Surprisingly, he wanted them to leave the Duan Ren border or he would kill the princess. "During these 3 days, I will not harm your precious princess. You have 3 days to think carefully," said Mo Yue. Immediately after, the ground shook and only a cloud of dust remained as they left. Only the Zhu Yue army was left and they were all in speechless despair. There was no possibility of discussing terms with Mo Yue. Mo Yue had given his terms and there was no margin for error. He left as soon as he finished speaking. While looking at Duan Xinyi leaving, Lin Feng's heart was laden with grief. Suddenly, he started feeling extremely guilty for what happened. If he was stronger, the princess wouldn't have been kidnapped. Duan Tian Lang would also have had no reason to accuse him and trigger a civil war amongst their 2 armies. The blood of hundreds of thousands of soldiers would not have been spilled. Of course, Lin Feng knew that he could not change the past. He was already endlessly furious. He couldn't change anything that happened. "Let's go back to Duan Ren City," said Liu Cang Lan while turning around and leaving. While looking at Liu Cang Lan's silhouette, Lin Feng was shaking in anger. He knew that Liu Cang Lan was suffering more than anyone else. All the soldiers who died were like his brothers. At that moment, a few silhouettes rushed towards Liu Cang Lan and stopped in front of him. "Liu Cang Lan, you triggered a war amongst the Zhu Yue armies which led to the deaths of so many soldiers. Even the princess was kidnapped. What should your punishment be?" shouted Duan Tian Lang, who rushed towards Liu Cang Lan. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes. That guy was no better than a beast. His subordinate had been acting as an insider to capture the princess. It was Duan Tian Lang who didn't want to give up the fight and wanted to harm Lin Feng no matter what. It was because of him that the situation became so chaotic, and he refused to give up even as the Mo Yue troops were launching an assault. At that moment, he was still blaming Liu Cang Lan. What a despicable and shameless person. "Liu Cang Lan, you killed hundreds of thousands of troops. That's a crime that can only be settled with your death," said Duan Tian Lang. Lin Feng's face became ice cold. Liu Cang Lan had been too lenient and was being treated unfairly. With their temperaments, life and death were really at stake. "Duan Tian Lang, I really admire you for still having the audacity to talk in such a way here." Lin Feng couldn't help but speak. He then said coldly, "A real traitor to your country. Using your power and authority allow the princess to get kidnapped while you avenge personal grudges. Your desire to kill me didn't only cause the princess to get captured, but you refused to stand down when the enemy bugles could be heard and continued to cause chaos within the army. When the Mo Yue troops arrived, you were still thinking about your own selfish interests, which led to the loss of a huge number of troops. You came from the imperial city with your troops and your son, but when the enemy arrived, you were fastest people to escape with your tails between your legs. Amongst the soldiers who died, many of them were under your control, and surprisingly, you still have the audacity to point your finger at Liu Cang Lan. If I were you, I would have died of shame a long time ago. I really admire you, as the chief commander. Being able to do all of this without being ashamed is truly admirable." Lin Feng's words were extremely cold. The army soldiers were surprised and looked towards Duan Tian Lang. He had a hideous expression on his face. "Lin Feng, don't forget that you're the princess' personal guard. The princess disappeared, you will not be able to escape your punishment. Duan Tian Lang, don't forget that you are the chief commander and the princess was kidnapped within your encampment and by your subordinate. I will not be able to escape my punishment. What do you even mean by that? Lin Feng replied aggressively. We will see who will die and who will live, replied Duan Tian Lang with an evil smile on his face. He then turned around and abruptly left. You should kill me as long as you have the opportunity, because if you let me live, that cowardly mutt that you call a son will die by my hands, and then you will be next, said Lin Feng while looking at Duan Tian Lang's silhouette leaving. Lin Feng's voice was like that of an evil demon. Lin Feng's words came from the hatred within the bottom of his heart. If in the future he was allowed to grow strong, he would definitely kill Duan Tian Lang and his son, without hesitation. Duan Tian Lang heard Lin Feng. He stopped for a second and then immediately continued walking. Lin Feng really planned to kill Duan Tian Lang and his son. If they didn't die, he wouldn't be able to live in peace. On the top of the tower above the city gate was Liu Cang Lan, and behind him were 4 officers, Lin Feng and Liu Fei. Liu Cang Lan had been standing there for a few hours already. He remained motionless while the others remained silent. They all understood the pain Liu Cang Lan was feeling in his heart. Over 100,000 people, their lives, their families, their future had vanished in an instant. This was the truth of war. It was the sad truth. Nobody could predict what was going to happen. Such dramatic events hadn't taken place in over 10 years. Besides, Liu Cang Lan had never lost any of his battles in the past, but at that moment he had lost and his army was massacred. PSHHHHH, Liu Cang Lan took a deep breath. He then slowly turned around. At that moment, everybody inside the city was already packing and ready to leave Duan Ren City. The Mo Yue country was putting pressure on them by using the princess, Life. They wouldn't be able to defend the Duan Ren border. If they lost the Duan Ren border, Duan Ren City would become a very dangerous place. A 500,000-strong army would easily be able to conquer Duan Ren City. They were not a simple military force. A large number had broken through to the Ling Chi layer. In one jump, they could scale the gate of Duan Ren City. From there, they could rain down arrows and annihilate everything inside. Even though Duan Ren City is vast, it could only be considered a small town. It has a population of 550,000 civilians. The civilians must leave the city, even though for many of them it is their place of birth. As a general, I cannot get them involved, said Liu Cang Lan while sighing. As in any war, the outcome is never certain. You can win or you can lose. The only thing in your control is how you deal with the situation, General, said Lin Feng while shaking his head. What do you expect me to do? I don't understand, asked Liu Cang Lan, who didn't understand. Lin Feng turned around, looked at Liu Cang. He then said in a calm and solemn tone, I need wood. Wood? Liu Cang Lan stared blankly at Lin Feng. He was dumbfounded. Lin Feng spoke again. Uncle Liu, I hope that you can satisfy my request this time. After remaining silent for a moment, Liu Cang nodded in a serious way and said, All right. Officers, I hope you can help me as well, said Lin Feng while looking at Jiu Kai Zai and the others. They all slightly nodded, even though they didn't know what Lin Feng actually really meant to do. At that moment in the city, horses were neighing and many people were getting ready to leave. Amongst these people, many of them were from the holy courtyard of Zhu Yue and the Celestial Academy. They all looked deathly pale. They had hoped to gain military exploits, but it was impossible for them. That place was too dangerous. They had to go back to the Imperial City where it was safe. This battle had nothing to do with them. Even the young men who had come with Duan Tian Lang were leaving as well. Liu Cang Lan, shouted Duan Tian Lang extremely loudly. Liu Cang Lan, you caused our own army fight against each other, and the princess was captured because of it. You then caused hundreds of thousands of people to lose their homes. I will report all of this to His Majesty, and he will decide himself on how to punish you for your crimes, shouted Duan Tian Lang as he moved into the distance. He made it sound like Liu Cang Lan was guilty for everything and never took any of the responsibility. Lin Feng's heart grew extremely cold. The princess had been kidnapped at Duan Tian Lang's encampment, but he was making out that it had nothing to do with him. Besides, he was running back to the Imperial City. The princess, Life, suddenly meant nothing to him any longer. Lin Feng also understood that Duan Tian Lang wanted to go to the Imperial City to remove all responsibility from himself and shift the blame onto Liu Cang Lan. Liu Cang Lan didn't pay attention to Duan Tian Lang. He was worthless. What Liu Cang Lan was regretting the most was that he let Duan Tian Lang join them in the first place. He should have known better than to think Duan Tian Lang would be of any actual use on the battlefield. With the smile of victory on his face, Duan Tian Lang, the chief commander, was escaping from Duan Ren City with his army. Liu Cang Lan would inevitably stay there and fight Mo Yue, resulting in his death. This battle would be even worse for them. No one would be able to escape uninjured. When the right moment came, Duan Tian Lang would report Liu Cang Lan's crimes to His Majesty. The third day, the deadline was slowly arriving. Rumbling noises filled the atmosphere. Mo Yue's soldiers on their horses were arriving outside of Duan Ren border. Their army stretched across the landscape as far as the eye could see. But at that moment, on the hills of Duan Ren border, there was nobody at all. Mo Yue moved towards the front line on his horse. He looked at the empty mountains and looked like he was lost in thought. Could it be that the troops of Zhu Yue had really withdrawn and were offering the Duan Ren border to the Mo Yue country? "Bring the princess to the front," said Mo Yue indifferently. Duan Xinyi was on a horseback and was wearing armor. Besides, she wasn't chained or restrained in any way. Just like Mo Yue said, they hadn't harmed the princess at all. "First row of black guards, go secure the cliffs of the Duan Ren border and do a thorough inspection," said Mo Yue. In a flash, a row of black guards galloped towards the top of Duan Ren border. If Mo Yue gave them an order, they obeyed it even if it cost them their life. This group of black guards were extremely skillful. If there was nobody to guard Duan Ren border, it was easy for them to reach the top. At the top, they could check if there was an ambush lying in wait for them. 1 hour later, the entire row of black guards came back. Nobody was missing. "Your Highness, there is nobody to be seen from the top of the Duan Ren border. There is nobody in Duan Ren City either, not even soldiers," said one of them. Mo Yue was surprised. Not only was there nobody in the Duan Ren border, but there was nobody in Duan Ren City either. "Clear the way first," said Mo Yue while sounding cold and detached. Maybe that Duan Ren City was already completely abandoned. If there wasn't the Duan Ren border, he would have already engaged in battle and definitely would have won. The soldiers were walking forwards and then disappeared beyond the Duan Ren border. Mo Yue and his troops were prudently moving forwards. If he fought against Liu Cang Lan, he would definitely win, but it wouldn't be that easy. During a war, a strategy had to be flawless. If it wasn't, one could suffer a crushing defeat. As Mo Yue thought, Duan Ren City was absolutely empty. It was a calm, silent, and unpopulated city. Mo Yue was standing at the top of the protection tower within Duan Ren City and looked expressionless. He had been coming to Duan Ren border for many years and always wanted to pass through. But at that moment, he had passed through. He could see the sea of broken weapons. It was the symbol of victory, but that victory was. "Station the troops inside Duan Ren City and occupy it," said Mo Yue. Immediately after, the order was passed to the troops. They had already conquered the Duan Ren border. They were also capturing Duan Ren City. Over the vast landscape, one could see the Mo Yue troops sweeping across the flatlands. At midnight, except for a few night guards, everybody was getting a well-deserved rest. Outside of Duan Ren City, a few sorrowful-looking silhouettes appeared. In their eyes was pure killing intent. At the same time, a great number of armored horses were silently moving towards Duan Ren City. However, they abruptly stopped. They didn't take one more step forwards. At that moment, Lin Feng was also outside of Duan Ren City. His black eyes looked ice cold. He could clearly see everything that was happening inside Duan Ren City. Lin Feng jumped into Duan Ren City. He was well prepared. A single guard was there. Lin Feng quickly covered their mouth to prevent them from shouting, and without mercy, he slit their throat. Lin Feng took the armor from the corpse and put it on. He then immediately threw the corpse from the city wall, and the people below caught it. Therefore, there was still absolute silence. Lin Feng could clearly perceive everything that was happening around him. He started to move with complete silence. A moment later, a few more corpses were thrown from the city wall. The Zhu Yue troops who were catching the corpses then took the armor from the corpses and wore it. They then jumped onto the city wall to replace the guards. They were all extremely skillful and careful to make no noise. All of them had been selected as the best amongst Kai Zai troops. They were all the best of the best from the most elite units within the army. They were all at least sergeants, and the weakest of them had reached the 3rd Lingqi layer. They were not only doing this at one location on the city walls. Many of them were all attacking from a large number of places and taking over the city wall. The strongest of them were moving into Duan Ren City, killing the night guards and throwing the corpses over the wall to provide the others with armor. It was already late into the night, so everything was done under the cover of darkness and with complete silence. Nobody had been alarmed by these actions. At that moment, a group of black guards armed with spears appeared in Duan Ren City. They looked majestic and imposing. Amongst them was a young man whose face looked incredibly delicate. It was Lin Feng. These people didn't belong to Mo Yue country at all. They were all from Zhu Yue. Because the Mo Yue troops had come in and immediately set up camp, they weren't very strict with fortifying their position. Therefore, Lin Feng could easily move to every corner of the city. A short moment after, Lin Feng and the others arrived at a room and immediately entered. "Stop!" someone suddenly cried. Two guards were preventing Lin Feng and the others from going inside. They then said, "Some people are already staying inside." "I know," said Lin Feng while continuing to walk forwards. These two guards were astonished. Immediately after, a resplendent and bright glow appeared, and a light green dagger cut the throats of the two guards. They then softly fell down onto the floor. Lin Feng's silhouette flickered, and he immediately moved towards the room. The door of the room opened itself, emitting a squeaking sound. The light green dagger started to glow again and quickly slit the throat of the man who just opened the door. His mouth was covered as he slumped down as to stop him making any sounds. "There is another person inside," said Lin Feng. Immediately after, they entered the room. Inside the room, there was a great deal of wood. This was part of their plan. The Zhu Yue troops were very familiar with it. They knew exactly where everything was placed. The same thing was happening at multiple locations within Duan Ren City. Finally, a sound filled the atmosphere, breaking the silence and calling the troops to attention. When Lin Feng heard the sound, he obviously knew that they were out of time. He quickly entered into another room, and as he left, flames appeared behind him. There were flames everywhere. Fire was completely covering Duan Ren City. Lin Feng seemed pensive while looking at the flames. In his previous life, he used to use fire to cook delicacies. In this life, he was using fire to cook people alive. Of course, he knew that this amount of fire wouldn't be sufficient. He needed to turn it into a rampaging fire, which engulfed the entire city. All around the outside of Duan Ren City, the Kaizai troops were watching the flames as they engulfed the city. After the order was given, they all urged their horses on and galloped towards Duan Ren City at full speed. In the blink of an eye, the Kaizai troops arrived in front of Duan Ren City with their bows in hand. The flames were already soaring higher and higher. Amongst the Kaizai troops, all of them had prepared for this moment beforehand. The heads of their arrows were already alight with raging fire, and immediately after that, they released their arrows from their bows, and a fiery rain of arrows fell upon the city. What seemed like an endless rain of burning arrows continued to rain down on the city. The scene was magnificent and tragic. Immediately after, the Mo Yue troops looked at the rain of burning arrows filling the sky above them. They were astonished. It seemed like the heavens were punishing them. After the Kaizai troops shot the first volley of arrows, they then started to circle the city, releasing volley after volley of fiery death. The scene was so bright that it seemed like the sun had risen early. Shortly after, the entire city of Duan Ren was a sea of flames. At that moment, chaos and disorder struck the Mo Yue troops. That sudden attack had surprised them. They had fallen into a fire trap. At the same time, inside the city, Lin Feng and the elite soldiers were assassinating the higher-ranking commanders who could relay orders to stop the chaos. If they had been prepared and ready to fight, it would have been difficult. However, using these burning arrows, it was possible to injure or kill cultivators of the third Ling Qi layer, and even the elites of higher cultivation levels. Of course, it was very difficult to injure the stronger cultivators, but it was enough to injure and kill the troops around them. That had been enough to create chaos amongst the Mo Yue troops. That blazing fire made the Mo Yue troops unable to return to formation and organize their army. It was even more chaotic amongst their horses. At that moment, Mo Jai was inside his room getting dressed. A burning arrow shot past him. He was calm yet looked pensive. Burning the entire city with flaming arrows, Liu Cang Lan really deserves his nickname, the Divine Arrow, said Mo Jai while sounding indifferent. Immediately after, he said, "I order all the troops to move back towards the northern gate. Don't extinguish the fire and don't chase those who have entered the city. Just move back to the northern gate and get prepared to welcome them." When Mo Jai finished talking, his order was relayed to all their troops throughout the burning city. At that moment, All the Mo Yue troops had stopped trying to extinguish the fire and stopped fighting against the infiltrators. They were all moving towards the northern gate of the city. Inside the city, a soldier was killed in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Mo Jai's order had been relayed to all of the troops, so they no longer looked for Lin Feng or tried to stop him. Lin Feng could also now ignore them and started to move towards the north gate. The soldiers who had been chasing Lin Feng were not the only ones to obey the order and stop fighting. All the army, without exception, followed orders. Nobody dared to call the order into question. They hadn't felt the slightest bit of hesitation. Mo Jai has such a strong influence on his troops, thought Lin Feng when he saw that scene. The Mo Yue country had the goal to make Mo Jai their national symbol, to make them worship him as a god amongst men. Mo Jai obviously enjoyed such a prestigious reputation in Mo Yue. There was no one who doubted his strength and talent. Staying in such a chaotic situation and being unable to act rationally could have led to heavy losses for their army. Gathering the troops together in one place was the best reaction to counter the enemy's strategy. It would enable them to concentrate their strength and break free from the encirclement. Now all we have to do is rely on Uncle Liu, thought Lin Feng. Immediately after, he sheathed his sword and ran like mad through the flames. He was running shoulder to shoulder with the other troops towards the northern gate. At that moment, even though the Mo Yue troops were trying to gather all together, chaos was still present amongst them. Lin Feng was wearing a Mo Yue armor, so there was no chance that anybody would find out who he was unless he attacked them. Besides, it was impossible for hundreds of thousands of troops to know every single face within the army. At the northern gate, there was an unceasing rain of arrows falling from the sky. The strong cultivators of the Mo Yue country had gathered there. Some of them could control ice, snow, and water. Therefore, they could easily extinguish the fire. In the entire city of Duan Ren, the northern gate was the safest place, but it was also covered in darkness. But in a short time, about 100,000 troops had already gathered there, and the number of people seemed to be increasing over time. The crowd was extremely silent. They could distinctly hear the chaos in the distance, as well as the people's steps near them. At that moment, Mo Jai was standing in front of the crowd looking towards the city gate, and said while sounding indifferent, "Open the gate! Open the gate!" shouted a high-ranking soldier. While the gate was being opened, a rumbling noises spread through the air. 5,000 elite cavalry open the way and secure the path 2 kilometers ahead, said Mo Jai. Some armored cavalry gathered. They urged on their horses and moved towards the exit of the city. In the middle of the night, they couldn't see a great deal, so they also couldn't see if they were running into an ambush. However, even in the case of an ambush, it was impossible for the entire army to get killed. In the middle of the crowd, Lin Feng looked at the soldiers who were remaining calm. Mo Jai was truly terrifying. Even at that moment, nobody was calling his orders in question. He was a true leader. Even at a moment when the sky seemed to be raining death down onto them, they remained calm and fearless. If the leader didn't remain calm, could his army remain calm? With such a huge number of people, it was hard to restore calmness to the army. The northern city gate was far from the Duan Ren border. Mo Jai was trying to think as if he was Liu Cang Lan, and if he had been Liu Cang Lan, he would have set an ambush between Duan Ren City and the Duan Ren border. But that was the western city gate. That's why Mo Jai had chosen the northern gate and not the western gate. He did not want to fall into a trap and get killed. The 5,000 cavalry were progressing through the dark. Everything was perfectly calm and tranquil. The only sound was that of their horse hoofs hitting the ground. At that moment, a few horses neighed loudly. Suddenly, there was the feeling that the ground was unsteady beneath their feet. The cavalry and their horses fell down in a deep pit. When the cavalry behind them heard this, they rushed over thinking it was an enemy attack and fell into the pit. The situation was chaotic. Those who had just fallen into the pit wanted to move, but then they were stopped by the falling soldiers and horses which fell onto them. The situation was chaotic. Arrows started to fill the air, emitting whistling sounds as they pierced through the darkness. Horrible shrieks unceasingly came from the direction in the elite cavalry unit had entered the darkness to clear the way. The faces of the troops still inside the city turned deathly pale when they heard the horrible shrieks. Their comrades had probably died in an ambush. "Let's move, let's go to the western gate," said Mo Jai while remaining calm. Immediately after, all his troops moved towards the western gate. Even though those who had an ice spirit were opening the way, they were still suffering losses as people died as they were burnt to death. or struck by the rain of fiery arrows falling from the sky. However, the number of troops gathered at the western gate hadn't decreased. On the contrary, there were even more than at the northern gate because there were still parts of the army joining the main force which had not yet arrived. At that moment, there were more than 200,000 soldiers that gathered at the western city gate. But Mo Yue felt cold in his heart. Setting the city on fire was an extremely cruel method. Mo Yue couldn't help but appreciate the strategy. That tactic was unprecedented in history of the continent, and it proved to be extremely efficient. It seemed like his 500,000-strong army were prisoners inside the city they had just captured. "Open the gate, 3,000 elite cavalry go and clear a path to the Duan border," said Mo Yue while still remaining indifferent. This time, he didn't send 5,000 but 3,000 troops. As before, these troops opened the gate and left without hesitation. However, they ran straight into an ambush, and Liu Cang Lan could be seen with his troops on the horizon. The Mo Yue troops understood that Mo Yue had seen that there was a high possibility of it being a trap. Going to the western city gate was actually falling deeper into their trap. A moment before, outside of the northern gate there might not have been enough traps to stop the entire army. There may have only been a single trap. However, they had fallen right into the enemy's hands. "General Liu Cang Lan, you are extremely smart. I am now thoroughly convinced," said Mo Yue while looking at Liu Cang Lan in a cold and detached way. At that moment, the Zhu Yue troops were still firing arrows. There was an endless rain of fire flying through the sky. Because the tower blocked their sight, the Mo Yue troops couldn't see how many people were waiting outside. They could only see an endless stream of fire on the horizon. "I am not the one who organized this strategy," said Liu Cang Lan coldly while slowly raising his hand. "General, if it was not you, who was it?" asked Mo Yue stupefied. "Lin Feng." Liu Cang Lan then waved his hand down. At that moment, a huge volley of arrows turned into a storm that ravaged the 200,000 of Mo Yue troops. Under that storm of burning arrows, a huge number of troops were killed without the chance to fight back. At the same time, the arrows set the corpses and the ground on fire, which created a sea of fire which spread and burned even more people alive. When Mo Yue saw that the Zhu Yue troops were about to shoot another volley of arrows, he already knew that it was impossible for him to escape. "Die!" shouted Mo Yue. The Mo Yue army turned into a fearless war machine and moved towards the city gate to fight the arrows head-on. At that moment, everybody was cursing a single name: Lin Feng. After that battle, Lin Feng would be famous within Zhu Yue, as well as in Mo Yue. Chaos, the troops from both countries were engaged in a fearsome battle. The battlefield was covered with the corpses of soldiers. The Mo Yue troops had rushed from the city to fight against the Zhu Yue troops. The Mo Yue troops constituted a powerful army, and their spears glowed through the dark night with fearsome killing. The broken weapons on the ground emitted quiet metallic clangs from their movements. On both sides of the city, the Kaizai troops gathered into one location on the battlefield. They then fired another volley of arrows towards the Mo Yue army. The fire was still raging, and the heat from the fire was growing more intense with every passing moment. The Mo Yue troops didn't know how to react. At the same time, amongst the Mo Yue troops, a sword glowed with a radiant light and released a terrifying deadly chi. The sword slashed in a circle at full speed, which created a terrifying pressure which killed hundreds of soldiers. It was Lin Feng. After that sword attack, the other Kaizai elites who had infiltrated the enemy's army also started to mercilessly slaughter the unguarded troops around them. It created chaos throughout the enemy army. However, they continued to follow orders and did not attach a great importance to their own lives. Fighting at that moment was an army of 250,000 Mo Yue troops, while the Zhu Yue troops were composed of less than 100,000 troops. Mo Yue, while suffering heavy losses within the city, still held the advantage in numbers. However, sooner or later, the other Zhu Yue troops would have a direct confrontation with the enemy army. They just had to wait until the Mo Yue troops moved closer. In the time it would take for the Mo Yue army to reach them, how many arrows could they fire? But they had already killed half of the Mo Yue army and had caused chaos within the army. Considering the fact that they still had the Kaizai troops ready to fight, and Lin Feng's group of elites inside the enemy army causing chaos, it was safe to say that they had complete control over the situation. When fighting the enemies in a head-on battle, who would have the bravest soldiers? Which side would win? Lin Feng was moving through the army. Anyone who tried to block Lin Feng turned into another corpse on the ground. Lin Feng wasn't alone, though. He was surrounded by the group of elites accompanying him. The battle between Mo Yue and Zhu Yue was a battle of victory or death. Retreating wasn't an option. Lin Feng had no choice. He needed to go and save Princess Duan Xinyi. Duan Xianyi had been kidnapped while he was protecting her. If something happened to her, Lin Feng would not only suffer a death sentence, but it was also mean punishment for Liu Cang Lan. Lin Feng had to rescue Duan Xinyi. To Lin Feng's left, a sword was also unceasingly glowing, and every time it moved, someone was killed, making its owner look like a reaper of death. His sword was moving much faster than that of Lin Feng's sword. Each of its blows were not only faster, but also much more powerful. The deadly chi it was releasing was several times heavier than that released by Lin Feng. It was clear that the owner of this sword had been through countless bloodbaths. Lin Feng turned around and saw the young man cutting down his enemies and was shocked. Currently, the young man's face was not like that of a beautiful girl. At that moment, he looked ice cold and emotionless. He was wearing pure white robes, but he looked like a death god. It was obviously Wenao Zhu. No wonder he was so respected and revered at the Celestial Academy. Wenao Zhu's beautiful eyes were as sharp as the god of Death's sword. On the horizon, a beautiful light started to fill the sky. Day was starting to break. Outside of Duan Ren City, the sea of broken weapons had also turned into a sea of blood and corpses. These corpses were still fresh, and blood continued to pour from the bodies to create a sea of blood. Lin Feng rushed forwards, and with a single deadly sword, he killed a dozen soldiers in his path. However, Lin Feng wasn't excited at all. He looked at all the countless corpses covering the battlefield. His heart felt saddened. This was war, and their lives didn't matter much on the battlefield, but to someone they mattered. A rumble spread through the atmosphere and was coming from a distant place on the horizon. It was a crash of lightning, as if the heavens were descending with their wrath. The entire crowd couldn't help but shiver from head to toe. Everybody slowly raised their head and looked to the horizon. On the horizon, where the sun had started to rise, there was now a sea of black clouds. It seemed like a human shape had appeared within them, but it quickly disappeared. Darkness filled the battlefield once again as the sky was covered by these clouds. It looked like a completely black creature who looked down on humans with disdain from the sky. How terrifying, thought Lin Feng. When he saw the sea of black clouds appear in the sky, his heart started pounding. A group of barbarians dare to fight against my Mo Yue. A silhouette appeared in the middle of the sea of black clouds. Immediately after, the palm of his hand thrust out, and a black seal appeared on the ground. The seal was the shape of a castle. There was a thick black deadly chi within which pounded into the ground and crushed anything in its way. The ground was violently shaking. The hearts of the Zhu Yue army were all trembling with fear. That attack had just killed 1,000 Zhu Yue soldiers. One attack was enough to claim 1,000 lives. These Zhu Yue soldiers could barely see it coming before they had been crushed, without even the time to give a horrible shriek. A gigantic black crater appeared in the ground from the attack. All the corpses of the Zhu Yue troops had disappeared into that blackness. Besides, those who were near the attack, men and horses were sent hurtling away. The faces of Zhu Yue army turned deathly pale. What kind of cultivator was that? Facing such a strong cultivator, they had lost all their courage to fight. Everybody had stopped moving. The Zhu Yue army had come to a halt. The Mo Yue army had stopped too. They had all raised their heads and were blankly staring at that black silhouette in the sky. Why-yay-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch? A short moment after, the Mo Yue troops gave a furious shout which made the ground shake. That was an extremely strong cultivator from Mo Yue. Alone, he could annihilate an entire army. When Lin Feng heard that shout, his sword slightly trembled. There was no room for strategy. He couldn't bring about a radical change in this situation. In front of such a strong cultivator who could influence the entire course of the war, there was nothing he could do. He raised his left hand. Lin Feng hated his own weakness. He was not strong enough to protect himself and was not strong enough to influence the continent. That black palm must have been genuine, pure energy, and the cultivator must be at the Xuan Qi layer. That pure energy was extremely brutal. A cultivator of the Xuan Qi layer could rely on pure qi and pure energy. Such a person could control the sky and eliminate his enemies with powerful attacks. He was clearly at the Xuan Qi layer, and Chu Zhanpeng would be like an ant to be crushed under this cultivator's shoes. Someone who could control the sky and attack from the heavens was at least at the peak of the Xuan Qi layer. Rumors said that the strongest cultivators could fly in the sky and kill millions of people as they wished. Those rumors were all true. That was the world of cultivation. Strong cultivators could act as they pleased. Soldiers, emperors, rulers, as long as they were strong, they could destroy or save life as they saw fit. Lin Feng also wanted to reach that point with his cultivation. He also hoped that he would be able to fly amongst the clouds someday. He was making great efforts to make that dream come true, and he was unceasingly battling to gain enlightenment. His heart was filled with incredible ambitions and aspirations. He would grow to be as powerful as an unmovable mountain. But to reach such a cultivation level, how much determination, experience, and training was required? Nobody knew. For example, the strong cultivator who was looking down on them from the clouds could easily destroy the army of Zhu Yue. Could it be that the Zhu Yue army was going to die? Liu Cang Lan, you've been resisting my army for a while now. I respect you. You are an outstanding person, therefore I will let you die with dignity. I will allow you to take your own life. The black silhouette in the sky was looking at Liu Cang Lan and sounded like a majestic deity. In front of him, even the highest-ranking generals meant nothing. Liu Cang Lan raised his head while looking calm and indifferent. He looked at that silhouette in the sky. He then looked at the Zhu Yue army. It looked like he was lamenting. During a war between two countries, the strongest cultivators are not allowed to get involved. That is one of the rules that all countries respect, but today you come and pressure my army. Have I tacitly consented? Liu Cang Lan's voice was filled with sorrow. Mo Yue would respect the rule unless it really wanted to conquer Zhu Yue. At that moment, no matter if it was Mo Yue or Zhu Yue, at neither of them had the power to conquer the other. Therefore, that rule couldn't be broken. Of course, there was one exception if one side accepted the behavior of the other side. I accept. When the Zhu Yue troops heard Liu Cang Lan, they were all filled with great sadness. Lin Feng was extremely saddened. The princess had been kidnapped, and Duan Tian Lang had caused chaos within the army. Liu Cang Lan at that moment had agreed to take his own life. This war had caused chaos. Nobody knew what would happen from that point. Note, Yan Yu means misty rain. Everybody was looking towards the sky at the black silhouette. They only saw that a cold smile had appeared on that black silhouette. He then said coldly, "Anyway, I will give you the time of 10 breaths. If you don't end your own life, then I will personally kill you." How could a real man accept death? I would rather die in a battle. Too bad that I've gotten my troops involved, said Liu Cang Lan while raising his head and looking at that black silhouette in the sky. Dense battle energy started burning around his body. His body then flew into the air. He was determined to fight until the end. How could he humiliate himself with suicide? The entire Zhu Yue army looked extremely saddened. This battle was unfair. "Since you want to die, I will help you achieve your goal," said the black silhouette coldly. He gathered the pure energy around his body once again. It contained immense power. In a towering rage, I rest under the whistling sound of rain. Gazing into the distance, looking up to the heavens, I utter a long and loud cry. My chest feels painful. 30 soldiers now with the dust and earth, the moon and the clouds stretching as far as can see. Suddenly, a song filled the entire battlefield with a harmonious melody. If Liu Cang Lan dies today, Prince Mo Yue will be buried here as well. That voice was so light and powerful that there was no doubt to the truth contained within those words. The black silhouette had a respectful expression on his face, and he then looked into the distance and said, "Who dares to say such insane things?" "Han Mo, did you think that the cultivators of Zhu Yue were gone?" asked a voice which was growing nearer and nearer to that location. That person was quickly approaching from a great distance away. A short instant later, another silhouette appeared in the sky. There was a floating cloud of pure qi underneath that man. He was sitting cross-legged on the cloud of pure qi. He was just calmly playing the zither in front of him. "Yan Yu Ping Sheng, if I had known, I would have brought a raincoat." When Han Mo saw the person, he was astonished. Why had he shown up on the battlefield? With magnificent ideals in my mind, yet starvation filling my stomach, I eat their flesh. To settle my thirst, I drink their blood. The middle-aged man was singing and playing the zither. His fingers drifted above the strings, and a white pure qi emerged. In a flash, an ear-piercing sound spread through the air, and suddenly, 1,000 soldiers from Mo Yue died miserably under the power of his sound-based attack. While laughing and talking, he reduced the enemy to nothing, killing without spilling blood. "Han Mo, if you kill my soldiers, I will kill your soldiers. In the same way, if you kill Liu Cang Lan, I kill Mo Yue," said the middle-aged man coldly while looking at Han Mo. Even though he was killing people, he looked graceful while playing the zither and smiling. The crowd was astonished. He was another extremely strong cultivator. They couldn't stop him. One melody from his zither, and he could instantly kill 1,000 people. When the Zhu Yue troops saw this person, they looked enthusiastic. Their hearts were once again filled with hope. They had never heard Yan Yu Ping Sheng's name, but they knew that if he could speak that way, it meant that he must be no weaker than the Black Silhouette. This was one of the elite cultivators of Zhu Yue. At that moment, Lin Feng's heart was pounding as well. Yan Yu Ping Sheng, that was his real name. Lin Feng knew that middle-aged man in the sky, but he wasn't the only one at the Celestial Academy. There were indubitably many people who knew him as well. That person was Lin Feng's zither teacher who taught him to cleanse his heart. It was his teacher from the peach tree orchard. Lin Feng hadn't thought that he would see him on the battlefield. It made Lin Feng finally start to feel relieved. The man that helped him break through to a higher Ling Qi layer was also one of the experts of the country. He was a wise man, and he moved at the speed of lightning. He strangely looked like Wen Ao Zhu somehow. He also had a womanly beauty to him, and on the battlefield, he had the presence of a death god. His attacks cut down the enemy army in thousands. Yan Yu Ping Sheng, whispered Lin Feng. He wouldn't forget his name. Maybe Yan Yu Ping Sheng was even stronger than Long Ding, the vice principal. Han Mo was fixedly staring at Yan Yu Ping Sheng. He remained silent for a moment and then said, Yan Yu Ping Sheng, long time no see. Would you like to fight against me? If you want to fight, let's fight. Yan Yu Ping Sheng sounded calm. He was so calm as if the rest of the world couldn't affect his feelings. Pure Qi was condensing around Han Mo's body. He spun his right hand in the air, and suddenly black pure energy appeared. Annihilation! Han Mo threw a punch through the air, which created an incredible noise as it broke through the atmosphere. That pitch-black energy seemed like it wanted to cover the heavens and the earth with its seals. The attack was rushing straight towards Yan Yu Ping Sheng. Yan Yu Ping Sheng was calmly sitting on his white cloud of pure qi. His fingers moved over the strings of his zither, and then an incredible bright light emerged and moved towards his opponent. PSHHH, PSHHH, PSHHH. Loud clashing sounds invaded the atmosphere. Immediately after, the resplendent and bright light pierced through that black energy. That incredible white light contained an amazing quantity of pure energy, and it was moving straight towards Han Mo. However, the black energy was also continuing its way towards Yan Yu Ping Sheng, even though the attack had been greatly reduced in power. Let's move to another place, shouted Han Mo while moving down through the air. That's exactly what I had in mind, replied Yan Yu Ping Sheng. His cloud of pure qi then vanished. Then the two silhouettes shot into the distance and moved far away from the armies. Finally, they disappeared from vision completely. Han Mo and Yan Yu Ping Sheng were extremely strong. If they had stayed there, their attacks would have killed the spectators, which is not what Han Mo and Yan Yu Ping Sheng wished. When all the troops saw the two silhouettes disappear in the horizon, they remained calm for a long time, gazing into the distance. At such a level of strength, one person could affect the fate of an entire battle. They could destroy an entire army. They were extremely powerful. No wonder that the 9 countries decided to set a rule stipulating that such strong cultivators couldn't get involved in wars. They could slaughter an entire army with little effort. Die! Shouted Liu Cang Lan in the air. He took his bow from his back and a golden spirit appeared behind him. His bow drew the attention of everyone. Liu Cang Lan then pulled back the string of his bow when golden arrow illusions appeared and immediately aimed at the Mo Yue troops. He then released the bow string, and 7 golden lights rushed through the air. Dozens of people died from this single attack. Die! Shouted the Zhu Yue army. The ground started to shake again. A moment before, Han Mo had killed 1,000 people with a single palm strike. He had also tried to force Liu Cang Lan to commit suicide, which had profoundly affected the morale of the troops. But at that moment, Yan Yu Ping Sheng had appeared and was fighting against Han Mo. He had come to save them. They still had hope to be able to escape from death. He had lit the fire within their hearts once again. Blood was heavily flowing on the ground once again. Lin Feng was firmly holding his sword and unceasingly cutting down anyone in his path. A group of people was fighting alongside him. Wherever they went, blood flowed. The battlefield had no set area, and the battle quickly grew to cover a larger area over time. There was absolutely no organization to this battle. It was only kill or getting killed. At that moment, Lin Feng finally noticed a silhouette. It was a beautiful girl riding on a horse, Duan Tian Lang. However, she was unable to move. Her body had been tied. Besides, she was surrounded by 8 of the elite cavalry soldiers. These 8 people were wearing majestic black armor. They were members of the Black Guards. Duan Tian saw Lin Feng. Her beautiful eyes looked like a warm autumn day. The expression in her eyes revealed that she couldn't wait to be saved by Lin Feng. Of course, these Black Guards had also noticed Lin Feng killing his way toward them, leaving nothing but blood and corpses behind him. Their facial expressions grew cold and evil. At that moment, Lin Feng jumped forward, and at the same time, a Black Guard also jumped towards him. PSHHH? The light emitted by Lin Feng's sword was dazzling. The Black Guard's hand moved. Immediately after, Lin Feng felt that a rapid river was rushing towards him. His sword was swaying in the midst of a raging storm of attacks. There was a noise like a wave crashing down on the atmosphere. When the energy they were releasing collided, Lin Feng was immediately blown backwards. He only saw that Black Guard had immediately landed back on his horse. He then looked at Lin Feng with a cold glare, and then the 8 Black Guards urged their horses forward and left with the princess. How strong? These Black Guards are extremely strong. Lin Feng's pupils shrank. Even though there were only 8 of the Black Guards, they were much stronger than all the people that Lin Feng had killed previously. Lin Feng rushed forward while brandishing his sword, and immediately after, a soldier fell down from his horse. Lin Feng immediately jumped on the horse and galloped towards these 8 Black Guards at full speed. Duan Tian, he had to be saved even if it cost him his life. The wind was piercing through Lin Feng's eardrums. He was urging like mad on his horse, galloping at full speed. 2 silhouettes brandished their spears. They wanted to block Lin Feng, but they only saw his sword glow for an instant. In a flash, these 2 silhouettes fell dead onto the ground. That move hadn't affected Lin Feng's speed at all. Lin Feng was still chasing the princess while being completely surrounded by a fierce battlefield with people dying all around him. Lin Feng was galloping at full speed. He was almost out of the Duan Ren border. These 9 silhouettes, without the slightest bit of hesitation, entered the passageway that led out of the Duan Ren border. Lin Feng followed them without hesitation. Even though the Duan Ren border was already under the control of Mo Yue, Lin Feng was also wearing the armor of a Mo Yue soldier, which made him look like he was one of them. Therefore, nobody was going to attack Lin Feng. Lin Feng, as well as the group following him, also passed through the passageway of the Duan Ren border smoothly. Passing through the passage didn't slow them down at all. Once they exited the passage, they could see corpses as far as their eyes could possibly see. These dead bodies lying on the ground were all of the Zhu Yue troops. What fast horses! Even though Lin Feng's horse was galloping at full speed, he couldn't catch up with the Black Guards at all, even though they were guided by the horse which Duan Tian was riding. These 9 brown horses were much faster than the ordinary horses Mo Yue soldiers used. However, Lin Feng didn't intend to give up, and he was just as determined as before. They continued to chase them for a few hours. Lin Feng didn't know how much distance he had already covered. Once in a while, he could see smoke in the distance. At that moment, Lin Feng had already crossed the border that Zhu Yue and Mo Yue shared. At that moment, he was in the Mo Yue country. At that moment, there was foam around the mouth of the horse which Lin Feng was riding, and it was covered with sweat. It looked exhausted. That horse had incredible strength and agility, but at that moment, it was already unable to continue. A horse that quick and agile was already exhausted. Lin Feng could already sense that he was near his enemies. The silhouettes he had been chasing were finally slowing down, and then they slowly stopped. Lin Feng then abruptly pulled on the reins to make his horse come to a halt. The horse neighed, and suddenly, the legs of Lin Feng's horse suddenly bent and it fell down. At the moment when Lin Feng was pulling on the reins, the horse was already too exhausted to continue. It no longer had the energy to continue. Lin Feng jumped down from the horse. He raised his head and saw that the people he was following were also slowly turning around. While remaining on their horses, they coldly looked towards Lin Feng. Behind these people, Duan Tian was staring at Lin Feng. Even though her hair was messy, her beautiful face wasn't covered, and her soft and delicate face revealed that she was touched by Lin Feng's actions. Her expression was bewitching. "Let the princess go." Lin Feng grabbed the long sword from his back. He then slowly started walking forwards. He looked cold and expressionless. The tip of his sword was dragging across the ground, which was sliced open by the sword, leaving a trail behind it. "The prince has given us the order to capture him alive," said one of the Black Guards indifferently. Lin Feng was stupefied, as the prince wanted him alive. The prince was obviously Mo Yue. Could it be that he had planned everything from the beginning and had sent these soldiers to escort the princess and run far away with her so that Lin Feng would follow them? It was too bad that we had to spare his life last time. All we could do was take the princess alive. The prince is too merciful, said one of the men. His face was visible, though. Even though he wasn't very old, his face was already covered with a long beard. Besides, what surprised Lin Feng is that even though the 8 people accompanying Duan Xinyi were all black guards, their helmets were different than normal. Amongst them, 4 of them had a helmet which entirely covered their face except for their eyes. The 4 others were wearing helmets which didn't entirely cover their faces. The one who had just talked was one of those wearing a helmet which didn't cover his entire face. Hu Qiang, even though we cannot kill him, we can teach him a good lesson. We can still be incredibly cruel, said another person. Hu Qiang was surprised. An evil smile appeared on his face. His horse then started walking towards Lin Feng. Do you know what status the 4 of us have? Asked Hu Qiang coldly. The 4 idiots, replied Lin Feng with an indifferent tone. How could he know who Hu Qiang and the others were? Idiots? Hu Qiang smiled coldly. You will realize how foolish you have been to attack us. We are all Black Guard lieutenants. We were leading troops on the battlefield, but because of you and that trap you organized, the prince ordered us to leave and capture you alive. You should be proud of yourself. Lieutenants? Lin Feng was surprised. Because of him, they used the princess as bait and sent 4 lieutenants. Against all expectations, they were really interested in him. But who were the 4 with their faces covered? Even though the chi they released was not as strong as that of the lieutenants, it was also extremely strong. Your strategy to set the city on fire has led to the death of many of our fellow soldiers, and even though I cannot kill you, I want to beat you within an inch of your life. All I feel is hatred towards you, said Hu Qiang. He then grabbed his weapon, which was a gigantic axe. He looked ferocious and terrifying. His axe probably weighed at least a few hundred kilos. Erg, Hu Qiang shouted furiously. His horse suddenly charged towards Lin Feng at full speed. His axe let out a loud, thunderous roar as it tore through the air. Lin Feng unsheathed his sword with incredible speed and sliced off the front legs from the horse which Hu Qiang was riding. Hu Qiang continued and jumped from his horse towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng then raised his sword to block the axe as it crashed down from above. When the axe and Lin Feng's long sword met, Lin Feng was pushed down. The shock alone was enough to make Lin Feng groan as he had been injured. How powerful, thought Lin Feng. He was astonished. He was blankly staring at the enemy. That guy was the same strength as the leader of the Black Guards he killed before, 7th Lingqi layer. He was a level stronger than Lin Feng. Besides, the pressure of Hu Qiang's battle axe striking Lin Feng felt like a mountain crashing down on him, and it even split the ground beneath him. You cannot even withstand a single attack, laughed Hu Qiang while looking down on Lin Feng. However, when he raised his axe again, he was astonished. Lin Feng suddenly transformed into a shadow and disappeared from sight. Lin Feng had acted so quickly that Hu Qiang didn't even have time to react. He was still clumsily raising his huge axe. Be careful, shouted one of the Black Guards, but it was too late. Lin Feng's sword was already at Hu Qiang's throat. Hu Qiang was still trying to raise his axe, but Lin Feng had already withdrawn his sword. Vanishing shadow was the art of taking people's lives by sudden surprise attacks before they could react. One strike was enough. That was the power of a die-level skill. Even when Lin Feng was still at the 4th Lingqi layer, he had used the same attack to kill a cultivator at the 7th Lingqi layer. Lin Feng already possessed the strength of the 6th Lingqi layer. Not only was his basic strength improved by a great deal, but he had also trained with using his martial skills. Practicing his martial skills allowed him to utilize maximum strength when attacking. He could use his vanishing shadow to slaughter people in an instant. Of course, Lin Feng had managed to kill Hu Qiang, who was at the 7th Lingqi layer, because he underestimated Lin Feng. He had thought that he was a true expert, and Lin Feng exploited that opportunity. I don't want to die. Hu Qiang's throat let out a small cry, his voice husky. And suddenly blood poured from his throat, and even if he didn't want to die, he was already dead. Life and death, a momentary slip and it could all be over.